Hello and welcome to 6th part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Was a Quirkless Boxer Part 3. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
When Wolfram arrived at the tower's roof, he saw his assistant getting the helicopter ready. He threw Momo, David, and the device's case onto it and was about to get on when he heard a shout coming from behind him. "Stop!" he exclaimed as he turned to see Izuku leaning against the doorway. His eyes were full of green light, and he was glaring a lot in his green one-for-all form. "Give them back," he yelled, increasing his power to 25%. Momo was beginning to wake up, and David had woken up to see this happen. Wolfram then began to approach Izuku, asking, "I see, did you come back to save this man who has done wrong, or for the woman you love?" After witnessing the battle against Takuma with Melissa, David remembered that he should have been controlled only by rage, but the boy took him by surprise. "No," Izuku exclaimed as he advanced, his gloved gauntlets getting tighter. "I've come to save them both." Izuku was now putting one for all into his head, and the power there helped him come to a more composed state of mind, while the power and fury of his angry body drove his body. Wolfram smiled and put his hand on the ground. He threw a pillar at Izuku, who was now running ahead, saying, "I understand saving the girl, but would you really go that far for a mere criminal?" The boxer leapt as the first pillar slammed into the ground and exclaimed, "I'm going to save everyone." Izuku was airborne when 3 more pillars were fired at him. The other 2 crashed into each other as they rose, and he swerved to avoid the first. "Ra aaggghhhh. Wolfram said, "What are you saying?" and hurled another trip at him. Sliding along the first in a spiral, Izuku jumped onto a second after the first he was on was destroyed. He then leapt off the second to slam his right fist into one that was flying directly at him, speeding even faster toward Wolfram. "This is what heroes do. We save those who are in trouble." Wolfram yelled, "How are you gonna do that?" and pointed his gun at the professor, halting Izuku's charge. David shouted, "Don't worry about me, get the girl and get away." Wolfram continued to smile as Izuku landed in front of him. The villain remarked, "Geez, it's so inconvenient being a hero." Izuku smashed the pillar with a right straight after he fired another one at him, saying, "I barely did anything, but you already can't move." He cut a second with a left, and as his arms grew tired, a third struck him, sending him reeling back. He was thrown into the air after jumping off 2 more that attempted to strike him, but he was unable to neutralize another because his arms were too tired to do so. He was slammed from both ends by metal pillars, and another threw him into the air before he hit the roof's floor. No matter what, being a hero is not a smart way to live. "Get us out," Wolfram exclaimed as he climbed into the helicopter. "I recently became proficient in this form. However, I require more. I have to save both of them." Izuku pondered. Similar to the Nomu during the USJ, he elevated his body over its limit with 50%, but he dropped OFA in his brain just to be safe in case it caused mental harm. Izuku began to leap up one of the pillars that conveniently formed a ramp towards the villains as the helicopter began to take off. Finally, he leapt, using his quirk to fly through the air and land on the helicopter, which shook violently. When Melissa reached the tower's roof, she saw the helicopter in the sky. "Midoriya," she announced. Reaching for Momo and the professor, the boxer ascended the wheel he was gripping. David screamed, "This is what I deserve. Take the girl and get away." Despite his anger, Izuku managed to say, "Melissa needs you." Wolfram finally stopped grinning and remarked, "You certainly are a hero." As he fired his gun, his smile reappeared and he said, "But you're also an idiot." Wolfram threw Momo off the helicopter just before Izuku deflected it, stopping Izuku from pursuing them before knocking David unconscious once more. As they landed, he tightened his grip on Momo, who was just beginning to awaken. As Momo slowly fell to his knees, Izuku released his rage form and rolled him gently off of him. Izuku screamed, "Damn it!" As Melissa rushed in their direction. He turned to face Momo on the floor beside him and opened one for all to try to activate it once more. "Give him back. Give the professor back. How can I say that I'm a hero, when I can barely save the one I love?" he said. A voice yelled, "This is the time to smile, young Midoriya." And the boxer turned to face it. Then he turned to see All Might fly over the helicopter, stopping the villains' progress with a blast of air. The number 1 hero exclaimed, "It's fine now." "Why, Because I am here. Give back my friend, villain. All Might charged at the helicopter, punched it to pieces, and flew out of the explosion while holding an injured David's shield. A second explosion caused the helicopter behind them to crash as he landed. Melissa called out, "Papa," as she rushed to her hurt father. Grasping his daughter, he said, Melissa. According to All Might, it's fine now. David started to say, All Might, but was cut off when the top hero was knocked aside by a pillar. The professor was grabbed by wires that sprang from the ground, and when they turned around, they saw a metal monster made of the tower's broken pieces sucking them in. Wolfram, with the device on his head, stood at the very top, wrapped in the metal of the tower. Wolfram's voice was distorted, and the metal mask covering his face was gone, now a part of his amplified power. That Sam said All Might's power was declining, and that he didn't have the power he once had. Izuku remarked, "He's using the device the professor made." With smoke rising from his body, All Might uttered, "Shit. My time is." Still, he decided to charge in and fight. "You don't know when to give up, huh?" He swooped to land a Texas smash on him, but a metal wall that wasn't even close to the villain blocked it. "What do you even call that pitiful attack?" Wolfram began using the remaining tower, with All Might being blown away and fragments from the upper floors drawn to the expanding pile of metal. His eyes were glowing purple just from the aura surrounding the metal he was using. As expected of something created by David's shield, "My quirk is being revitalized," he said. An army of metal pillars shot towards All Might, who fled, punching through one before being struck by another. "This is great. To raise the price of this thing, why don't I demonstrate how it can destroy even the number one hero?" he exclaimed. The floor launched Melissa into the air, but Izuku caught her as he turned to face All Might, who was blocking against one. He's reached his breaking point. As Izuku watched the steam rise from him, he thought. A trio of pillars collided with All Might, and Izuku dodged one that was aimed at him. Additional pillars prevented the hero, who was not spitting blood, from surpassing his limit. Wolfram screamed, "Hurry up and get crushed." But before they could get to their destination, the pillars were frozen. As All Might was rescuing David, Izuku turned to see Todoroki and the others there, along with Kato, who had picked up Momo. Bakugo shouted, "Go to hell," as a metal wall stopped the explosions. Quirk overuse also caused him to clutch his right hand. "How could you get beat up by such a shitty final boss? We'll take care of the giant metal bits. You two just focus on kicking his ass," said Kirishima. Kato was untying her restraints beside the rooftop entrance, and Momo was beginning to awaken. Inspired by their actions, All Might exclaimed, "With my students so motivated, how can I be held back by some stupid limit?" He charged at Wolfram, swerving and crashing through the air to avoid the barrage of unfrozen pillars and more. "I need to push above my limit, and even further beyond." "That's right, plus ultra," he exclaimed. Izuku observed All Might charging in Wolfram's direction, comparing it to a dogfight because of the way All Might dodged when he was in the air. All Might shouted, "Carolina Smash," and slammed into a phalanx of pillars with their arms folded in a X shape. All Might shouted, "Get ready, villain," before his charge was halted by being ensnared by wires. With his skin glowing purple and pinging, Wolfram grabbed his throat, ripping his sleeve as he increased the power of his quirk. The rest of Wolfram's skin was glowing the same color, so his face paint also flew off. "Prepare myself. You should follow your own advice, All Might." The hero screamed and Izuku ran towards them as Wolfram clutched his scar, causing the hero to spit out blood. Izuku exclaimed, "All Might Og," and collapsed to the ground, his body exploding in agony. "This power enhances muscles. There are multiple quirks in my system right now." "Don't tell me," coughed All Might. "Yeah, when we were planning this extortion, that man gave me a call. He said he wanted to work with me. When I asked him why, this is what he said. If All Might's friend has said he wants to have a hand in something evil, then I definitely want to help. It is unfortunate that I will not be able to see All Might's face twist in pain when he finds out though." The voice of that man resounded in All Might's head. All Might shouted, "All for one," and knew exactly who he was referring to. With a broad smile, Wolfram remarked, "You've finally stopped smiling. What a wonderful sight." "No." The top hero stepped up his attempts to escape, but the wires and a metal pillar pulled him back, and several metal cubes crashed into him. Everyone exclaimed, "All Might," as more cubes crashed into the hero, encircling him in a gigantic sphere. Wolfram exclaimed, "I'll crush you flat," and unleashed metal pillars that piled up as they charged at the sphere, piercing its center. Melissa exclaimed, "Uncle Might," as a green blur sped by. Smash! Izuku shattered the sphere that contained All Might with a full-powered right fist. Wolfram exclaimed, "That brat." Before he and his metal monster were struck by falling debris, All Might saw Izuku on the ground and stood, pushing debris off his back. All Might remarked, "Young Midoriya, it's too reckless for you to do that," as Izuku used his hands to raise himself. Izuku turned to All Might and remarked, "But a hero has to save those in trouble. You and Kato-sensei taught me that, remember?" He laughed, and the hero's smile came back. All Might held out his hand to Izuku, who took it. "Thanks, young Midoriya. It's true that I'm in a tight spot right now. Lend me a hand." Reactivating his boxing gloves over the gauntlets, he was assisted to his feet. Slamming his fists together and flaring one for all, he threw off his shirt and tie. As Wolfram recovered, the two yelled, "Let's go," and ran to the top of the second tower. He proclaimed, "Worthless little brat. You're nothing better than trash." While forming a force of metal cubes, he threw the cubes in the direction of the two, saying, "You don't know when to give up. The only one who doesn't is you." As Izuku kept running, Bakugo screamed and exploded, destroying a dozen. An awakened Momo formed a barrier from behind to keep everyone safe, firing missiles at any additional pillars that were coming their way. "I will not allow you to obstruct them." With metal pillars barreling towards the two, Todoroki screamed and used his ice to form a huge wall to keep them at bay, All Might leaping high while Izuku remained on the ground. "Get out of my way!" Wolfram screamed, causing the floor of the tower to tremble as he formed a metal cube the size of about 5 floors. All Might ran across plate after plate, slamming his fist into a wall that instantly exploded in a bright orange explosion. Izuku was running at a slightly slower pace, but he was suddenly spiking in one-for-all usage to turn into a streak of lightning with the speed he was traveling at. When he spotted a metal pillar in his path, the boxer cleaved it with a flying kick, and Izuku caught up to All Might. Melissa watched as both were now approaching Wolfram in unison. "What, is that right?" As Uraraka recovered, he saw that above the villain, a cube the size of 5 floors of the tower was being constructed, and Izuku and All Might leapt towards it, their fists clenched with strength. All Might started, "To overcome the crisis in front of you," Izuku went on, "and go beyond your limitations. And save people, with all of your resources. That is what makes a hero," Izuku concluded, both of them using their full strength. "I'll crush the tower and you." With a shout, the villain threw the enormous cube in their direction. 2. Detroit. All Might and Izuku continued to fly towards the cube, their fists creating a bright light as they flew closer and closer. SMAAAAAAASH. As David was waking up, the cube exploded in a brilliant light as their fists struck it, shattering it and cracking Izuku's right gauntlet in the process. The two appeared to him like a crashing comet. "Leave!" Mina and Uraraka shouted. "Go after him!" Kirishima and Iida applauded. "It could be anything," Todoroki and Bakugo shouted. Midoriya, Melissa, Mineta, and Kaminari added. Izuku. With All Might flexing behind him, Izuku's right gauntlet glowed pink and gold, as if he was holding the power of a meteor in his fist, and Momo screamed as the two prepared a final attack. "Go above and beyond." All Might uttered those words. Ultra. While his successor's power was still overflowing, All Might ended his attack and kicked off the tower up towards Wolfram with his right gloved hand clenched, leaving him still holding his gauntlet. They screamed and collided into Wolfram with the force and brightness of a colliding star, obliterating Izuku's right gauntlet and leaving only the glove underneath to drive into his stomach. This is what being a hero means to the professor, Momo, Melissa, and everyone else on this island. Muda, 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 Muda. The professor's eyes widened in recognition as he realized that a new symbol of peace was in the making. Wolfram's metal construction began to crumble, with the rest of the students watching as it fell back to the tower's top floor in bits and pieces. His fists blurred into the villain's form, releasing every last ounce of power and rage he had built up against him over the course of the evening as he quickly bashed and punched at the man who had invaded the island. Afterward, they emerged from the opposite side, freeing David as the sun rose for a new day. They succeeded, Mineta exclaimed. Melissa ran to the top of the wreckage of Wolfram's fallen tower, where the villain was trapped in a wall imprint of himself, the device falling in fragments from his head. Izuku came out from beneath a heap of dust and concrete debris to see Melissa sprinting toward him. All Might shouted, Dave, Dave. Are you all right, Dave? While he and Kato were examining David's shield. After hitting two friends, the madman slowly woke up. With the right side of his face deflated, All Might was halfway into his muscular form. The professor grinned as the two said, we came to save you. Thanks, was his reply. Papa, All Might, Kato-sensei, they exclaimed, turning to face Melissa and Izuku, who were waving at them from the top. If you want to thank anyone, thank young Midoriya and Melissa. Izuku turned to face Melissa, who wiped away her tears and said, I'm so glad. I really am. Thanks to you all, we were able to save everyone. She was taken aback when the boxer said, it's thanks to you too, Melissa. He raised his left hand and deactivated everything except for the tape and the gauntlet in its bracelet form, saying, I was saved many times by your full gauntlets. He smiled as he turned back to her and moved it to his right arm. Her next move would be decided by his next words. Her eyes widened as he said, in that regard, it makes you as much of a hero as the rest of us. Midoriya, she uttered, her cheeks flushed and her eyes closed. She kissed him right away after placing her hands on the sides of his head. Izuku's eyes grew wide, and he grabbed Melissa's shoulders before he withdrew. Melissa-san, what are you doing? Izuku exclaimed, horrified by her behavior, her face flushed. I'm sorry Midoriya, I was given a chance to talk with you, and I'm taking it now. Midoriya, no, Izuku, I like you. I know it seems way too soon for me to feel this way, but I've only understood what me heart was saying recently. Your matches, your demeanor, your everything. I thought it was just simple admiration for you, but when I talked to Yaoyorozu-san before the party I learned that it was more than just that. I know you'll reject me, but I just hope that we can. Melissa was interrupted when Izuku placed his hands on her back. Melissa-san, don't think so fast as to how I feel. After we fought that blade villain, I started to feel something. I don't know what it is, but there's something there. I'm just scared that I'll hurt Momo with this. Why don't we talk to her and see where this takes us? Melissa said, I'd like that. Then they heard a phone call. As they turned right, their friends began to wave to them from the bottom of the hill. The three adults on the other side turned to face them as they began to wave back. My device and research, they were all to maintain your fading light, Yagi. Melissa is desperately trying to be my successor, and my work to maintain what was already there blinded me from seeing that there is one for the symbol of peace as well. David responded. Kato remarked, that's our student. Kid's got a lot of strength and heart under his belt. The thing he wants first is that belt to read, champion. Toshinori and Kato lifted David up to assist him in receiving medical care, saying, they're going to be amazing people in the future. The students too. Our duty as the previous generation is to guide them to that goal as best as we can. That afternoon, later, the students were relaxing after their exhausting evening in the tower after obtaining medical attention for David and providing an opportunity for everyone to receive treatment and sleep. All but 3 of them took advantage of the opportunity to go out and enjoy themselves since they were free to roam around the expo. However, Izuku, Momo, and Melissa were in the couple's room during a crucial conversation. Momo said, so Izuku, Melissa-san, you both know why we're here, correct? And both of them nodded. The Yaoyorozu heiress narrowed her eyes at the girl, who was looking down in embarrassment, and said, I saw you kiss him, Melissa-san. In my defense, what he said was so heartfelt and kind, I just couldn't resist, Yaoyorozu-san. I'm sorry, Melissa responded, and Izuku, what I said earlier was and is still how I feel. You inspired me by fighting without your quirk, and I admired you for it. Love evolved from admiration, and it came hard after I finally met you for the first time yesterday. Izuku was also looking down and fumbling with his thumbs when Momo said, Izuku, now that you know how she feels, what are you going to do? I don't know, Momo, I love you to the ends of the earth and back. It's just, when we were climbing that tower, when I finally got a glimpse of the person Melissa was, something sparked, you know. I just don't want to betray you in any way, and despite that me even thinking of someone else in a possibly romantic light makes me believe I've already failed. If you think that's disgusting and want to leave me for being a perverted asshole, then, Momo placed his finger on his lips and asked him to admire her. With a playful smile on her lips, she recited Izuku's earlier words, Izuku, don't think so fast as to how I feel. I know you wouldn't do anything to purposefully hurt me, and I do think that Melissa-san's earned more than just telling you how she feels based on how much she helped us yesterday. Besides, You thinking that way already means you're still a good person despite your feelings, and I could never hate you for being you. Make your choice, Izuku, because no matter what you choose, I'll be there to support you every step of the way. Izuku began to weep and quickly dried up his eyes in order to decide. Thanks, Momo. I think I want to see where this goes. As I said earlier, I don't fully know what my feelings are for Melissa-san. But, if you give me the approval to not hurt her and see what these unknown feelings of mine are, then I want to do my best to make you both happy. As much as it sounds like a low-quality harem manga or the response of a disgusting pervert, I want to see where this takes us. All three of us. He laid his unwrapped hands on them, Momo's on his right and Melissa's on his left. Really? Izuku grinned as Melissa covered her mouth with her remaining hand in shock. Really? He answered back. The boy returned her embrace with a blush on his smiling face after she jumped on him. Sapphire Blue was staring into Emerald Green, pulling back a little as they began to close in. Momo watched as the two kissed, blushing and grinning a little as the kiss solidified the beginning of their new relationship. I hope Izuku can make this work, but it will be weird to get used to it. I can at least say something if not, she thought. As the two parted ways, Momo said, no playing favorites now. Won't wanna have to fight with Melissa-chan here for your attention, right? He said to Momo, of course. I'll make time for both of you. Now get over here. Momo smiled back and kissed Izuku. So, what are we gonna call this? I don't want to call it a harem, because that seems degrading. What if you just say you're in a relationship? It's vague enough that the media and others won't question it, and at the same time it encompasses both of us. The only thing you'll have to worry about is dates, since I don't think the press will be very nice if you're seen on a date alone with me. Melissa responded. Momo said, that could work. Izuku swallowed, recalling her father's arm cannon. We can just go on dates as all three of us, so the media won't be able to suspect anything. The only other issue may be my parents. With a dejected expression, Melissa said, we can talk to father before our time at the island ends. Melissa started to say, oh yeah, you guys have to leave soon, huh? But Izuku grabbed her again. The boxer stated, until then, we'll spend as much time with you as possible. Kato was talking on the other end of his phone when it abruptly rang. Kid, can you make it to the villain attack exhibition? The one with the robots you beat the crap out of yesterday. People both working and visiting caught wind that the champion wanted an exhibition match with you, and they already set up a ring. Change into your boxing gear and get here ASAP. See ya, kid, Kato replied, immediately terminating the conversation. Izuku leapt to his feet, tossed off his casual shirt and pants, and reached into a duffel bag he had brought. He quickly changed into his new black tank top, red boxing shoes, and green shorts. He had the laces for both of his championship gloves, which matched the ones Momo had made for him, on hand as he wrapped his hands. Momo approached him, took the gloves, and gave him another kiss before tying the laces on his right glove. I have to prepare something here with Melissa-chan, so we won't be able to watch. But, good luck, was her statement. Melissa approached him and did the same, but Momo also laced his other glove because she was unable to do it herself. Melissa remarked, I hope your match goes well. Izuku exclaimed, thanks ladies. Off I go, and hurried out the door to the exhibition. When they arrived at the field where the enormous mountain of robots had once stood, they found it to be level, with a black path ascending from each field entrance to a boxing ring in the middle. The screens centered on the center, where Izuku's second, an elderly man, was seated in one of the corners with the man he had worked so hard to meet. Kato exclaimed, kid, there you are. As Izuku's eyes widened to an almost dangerous degree. Kato covered his ears as Izuku screamed, why didn't you tell me the champ wanted to fight right now? Save your breath for the fight, kid. I told you about this a while ago, remember? Izuku pouted and remarked, you never told me when. Kato stated, I did. Right now. Izuku rolled beneath the ropes and hurried to his feet, grinning at the champion. Now get in there and show him that you have what it takes to get that belt when the actual title fight happens. He said, Alright folks, the exhibition match is about to begin. In one corner is a rising featherweight star, a rising young man who hides tremendous power under his quirkless fighting style. In the blue corner, Izuku Midoriya. The camera focused on him, and he was grinning maniacally, causing the crows to cheer. And in the red corner is the featherweight champion of Japan. With 2 fists, a dream, and a quirk that allows for swift rotation of the waist, we have the wind god. With black hair and white shorts adorned with red lines and stars across the right leg signifying each title victory thus far, the Japanese champion was a tanned man. He was 23 years old and tanned. "Izuku Midoriya-san, you have no idea how excited I am for this fight," he exclaimed. Izuku replied, "If anything, this is a dream come true. I'll show you how strong I am." As both men smiled wildly, the champion raised his fists in front of Izuku, and the green-haired boxer did the same, instantly bumping fists. "Now then, let us begin. Izuku Midoriya versus the Japanese king of the featherweights, the wind god himself, it's Makanouchi Ippo. Ding, ding, ding. Fight." Izuku's head instantly snapped back at the ring of the bell after the champion gave him a 1-2 to the face. "I overlooked that." Izuku raised his arms to deflect a powered right hook, thinking, "Makanouchi-san can quickly rotate his upper body thanks to his quirk. I didn't realize it allowed him to deliver powerful blows so quickly." The champion flinched as he sidestepped a left straight and countered with a body blow, but Izuku was hit by a swift left hook. The boy saw a barrel headed directly at his face and backed up. The green boxer swerved his head out of the way, but the champion countered with a left body blow after using his quirk. Izuku gritted his teeth and continued to smile at the champion. Ippo delivered a body blow, but before it hit, he used his quirk to deliver a punch that was twice as powerful. Having braced himself for such a scenario, Izuku sidestepped the blow and moved into Ippo's defense. Izuku backed up and delivered 3 quick body blows to encourage the champion to advance. He mentally grinned as he saw Ippo attempt to get past his defense, countering a right hook with a left straight that caused the champion to flinch. He then delivered a fast jab that resembled a gazelle punch, followed by a right hook. He countered his next blow with a right uppercut and a boosted left hook. Ippo began to batter Izuku's defenses, and Izuku raised his arms in response. Ippo's upper body rotation gave each punch more force. Izuku barely ducked as a fairly powerful right straight was thrown at him, and the blow barely touched his left cheek. He launched an uppercut from his position, but a body blow neutralized the blow. Izuku was already staggering to the ground when the champion staggered back and delivered a potent combination of rib shot, liver blow, and 1-2. Down. 1, 2, 3. Izuku sprang to his feet as quickly as he could, shook himself off, and then assumed his fighting stance again. The referee shouted, "Box," and the match resumed. Izuku kept a close eye on Ippo's waist as he flew towards him once more. Izuku saw that Ippo had used his quirk to make his blow into a fake, so he dodged right when he saw him throw a right hook. In order to stun Ippo, he ducked under a left straight and slammed a right fist into his ribs, backing away rather than pushing forward. Both men hurried back in to resume the fight after glancing at each other's faces and noticing that they were thrilled by the action. Izuku met it with his own fists, sliding past the other and straight into each other's faces as he threw a boosted right straight. "I'll outsmart you in this conversation. Get it done, Izuku," the younger fighter shouted in his head. Both boxers fell to the ground as the deafening blows from the two fists colliding silenced the arena. When the announcer yelled, "D-double knockdown," the crowd roared back with cheers and screams. Both boxers stood up at the 5 count, but they were unable to continue fighting before the round-ending bell rang. Izuku went back to his corner and slammed onto the chair, breathing deeply while Kato attended to a small cut on his cheek. Izuku remarked, "He's strong. This is exactly what I dreamed of." As he completed his treatment, Kato inquired, "You've been practicing for when that happens, right?" As Kato sprayed him with water, Izuku remarked, "I'm more than ready." After spitting it out, he got up and prepared for more. He walked over to the center and smiled at Ippo, who smiled back at him with equal enthusiasm. The champion dashed into Izuku's defense to deliver a liver blow as soon as the bell rang. "Champion, I know what you're doing. I'll take it all and give it back in equal measure," Izuku thought, delivering another blow to the liver. Izuku saw Ippo's move and quickly recovered before he could land a gazelle punch. "Anytime, I'll take you on." Izuku was quick enough to deliver a gazelle punch of his own, both blows landing at the same time, into Ippo's chin. Ippo began weaving as both men flinched away, and Izuku grinned as he watched the Dempsey roll eventually start to be used. A year ago, Kato showed Izuku a video of Sawamura, a boxer who was able to completely counter the Dempsey roll, and said, "Okay kid, if you want to fight the champion, you need to know how to get past his special technique." The Dempsey roll is a rapid weaving of the body that Makanouchi-san uses as a powerful attack. He weaves between blind spots, and uses his quirk to increase the speed and power of his hooks between each rotation of his body. To counter this, a simple attack used to be enough to neutralize it, but after this fight, you see how it's changed. Izuku observed Ippo slowing down but still attacking with extreme force after Sawamore's punch flew right past him, forcing his quirk to turn him the opposite way. Another way to neutralize the Dempsey roll is to push him away with your shoulder and regain momentum against him. Izuku said, "Kato-sensei, I noticed something. If you can figure out how to dodge one of the hooks, it's somewhat easier to dodge the rest since you would know exactly where the next attack is coming from. However, backing away and countering won't work, so the best way to proceed is to force him to stop, dodge the follow-up, and attack with jabs, since he's still able to dodge from any position he ends up in." He was writing in his notebook while he said this, and Kato was beaming. The remainder of the day was spent in lecture, with Izuku learning everything there is to know about the champion's signature move. Exactly. Now when he uses the Dempsey roll against you, you also have to beware of the combo he uses to start it. Presently, Izuku recalled how he decided to block this strong blow as he watched the champion continue to weave between his blind spots. But my best chance of winning is that, but I don't want that. I wish to demonstrate to Mananouchi-san my equal strength. Izuku pondered. Izuku's decision to begin weaving as well stunned Kato and the audience. Even though Ippo's eyes widened in surprise, he kept weaving. Every time Ippo weaved to his right, Izuku would weave to his right, reflecting his own rotations. "You have my acceptance, Midoriya-san." Ippo pondered, and they threw their first blows. Izuku powered through the first hook's impact to fire a hook of his own back at the champion. The arena was filled with the reverberation of two jet engines, each one sounding like a plane colliding. The two boxers fought through it, one to demonstrate his strength and the other to acknowledge it. The blows were delivered simultaneously and had more than enough power to knock down opponents with weaker wills and bodies. "Keep pushing forward, you'll have the advantage if you live." As another hook fell on Izuku's face, he gritted his teeth. When he saw the champion's knee buckle after landing another on Ippo, he used the moment to complete his own Dempsey roll by throwing a left hook, which pushed Ippo back. Ippo used his quirk to go for a counter with a right hook after he ran in with a wide overhead left. His eyes widened when Izuku threw his upper body near ground level with the hook sailing over his head, instead of using his fist to strike him. Izuku moved his upper body from that position, using the momentum from his right fist to give his co-punch more force. "Come on, dodge." The punch reminded Ippo of Sendo's smash from his previous bouts with the former featherweight champion, but his body was too slow to react. Ippo felt as though a truck had struck him when it made contact. The champion went to his knees after the punch forced him into the ropes. The announcer yelled, "H. He's down." The champion is downed after the surprising clash of a double Dempsey roll. As Ippo began to stand up, he was ready again by the count of 5, and Izuku saw Ippo's eyes as the referee resumed the fight. "He's still alive, as the champion would have it. Let's see if you can handle this now," said the younger boxer. To the surprise of all but Kato, Izuku changed his stance and lowered his fists. With his left hand near his face and his right hand by his stomach, he stood with his legs shoulder-width apart. He appeared to be preparing to throw kicks as well, as evidenced by his slightly lowered head and 45-degree bent waist. Kickboxing. How is that going to work in this situation? With 30 seconds remaining on the clock for the round, Kato pondered. Izuku approached the winner, who had switched to a peek-a-boo move. Ippo dodged right to avoid what he thought was a left punch, but it was barely a right hook as he shifted his left leg forward. What? When Izuku rushed in and stuck his right foot out, Ippo was perplexed. Izuku smiled in his head as Ippo ducked to the left but was struck with a left hook instead. One of the fundamentals of boxing is footwork. I can switch up my footwork and give my opponents a hard time with my kick-based style. Even though I only recently figured this out, it's already working. Ippo managed to evade 5 more fake punches and hit Izuku with another blow to the ribs after Izuku managed to land 2 more punches. In order to counter a right swing with a left body blow, Izuku maintained his stance. Izuku then assumed his initial position, and the two made the decision to square off. A right hook was used to counter Ippo's right straight. A boosted left liver blow was delivered in response to Izuku's left uppercut. The pain made both men wince, but they ignored it and continued to enjoy themselves while fighting it out. The bell halted them just as they were about to deliver another round of punches. After giving Izuku more water, Kato said, Okay kid, this is the last round. Hopefully you have enough energy to give it all you got one last time. With a start, Izuku exclaimed, wait, this is the last round. It's an exhibition match, remember. Just make sure you show him how strong you are. That's no longer the issue. The issue instead is how I'm going to beat him, since to be honest, I'm running on low power Kato-sensei. It's just one more round, kid. Seconds out. Kato exclaimed, well, there's the signal. Make it a final round the champ'll never forget. As Izuku made his final dash to the middle of the ring. The champion's eyes were still alive, he realized as he lifted his gloves to his face. As the last round started, Izuku smiled the biggest smile he had ever had. In the stands, a short black-haired man exclaimed, these guys are intense. Holy shit, they're monsters. Cried a tan-skinned white man with red hair. He yelled, Takamura, they're monsters. To a big, burly man wearing a pompadour who was observing intently. Takamura continued to observe, thinking, Ippo has the speed advantage because of his quirk, but that kid is more inventive, using kickboxing as a base for a feigned style. He's much stronger than we thought if he can take the Dempsey role and turn it into a slugfest. Takamura recalled that during Izuku's bout with Akuma, Aoki and Kimura remarked that the boy's fury was similar to his own against Brian Hawk. Returning to the ring, Izuku ducked under a hook that hazed over his head, threw his body to the right to avoid a powered left straight, and slammed a fist into Ippo's stomach. Izuku attempted a clinch as the champion doubled over, but instead of grabbing him, he blasted into Ippo's defense, slamming body blow after body blow into his sides. Ippo pushed Izuku away after 5 strikes and began rolling once more. As the two got ready for a second duel exchange, Izuku began rolling once more. Izuku was thinking, I'll do this as many times as I have to too, when his knee gave way unexpectedly, allowing Ippo to launch an attack. The damage he had accumulated from the first 2 rounds finally hit him. That's what separates him from the champion, Kato thought. Although they both possess incredible strength and speed, Ippo has handled circumstances similar to this. He is capable of handling damage accrued in previous rounds. Takamura added, mentally observing the scene before him, this kid doesn't, so he's forced himself to where he is now. Come on, body, avoid the first blow, at least. Work with me, and we'll be able to avoid the rest. As Izuku saw the Dempsey roll's first blow fly in his direction, he mentally screamed. Izuku clenched his jaw and attempted to shift his body away from the assault, but he was a split second too late, allowing Ippo to hit him with a full-power Dempsey roll. Right, left, without pause or pity, hooks pounded on him from both blind spots. This is how it is, then, to receive a Dempsey roll. Izuku was thrilled to have the opportunity to face the featherweight champion at last, and he was mentally noting the Dempsey roll's raw power and speed. You're strong, Midoriya-kun. More powerful than I thought. I'm happy I got the chance to battle you. Ippo delivered a powerful blow with a right hook to finish his combo, which was enhanced by the momentum of his roll and his quirk. Izuku, who appeared to have been born with his head turned backwards, was hurled to the opposite side of the ring and landed on his stomach on the mat. Down, shouted the referee. 1. Izuku was motionless on the mat. His breathing was the only thing moving. 2. The younger boxer exclaimed, trembling and slowly moving his arms. 3. Izuku said, trembling as he began to raise his torso with his arms. 4. The boy's legs began to follow, and he was now kneeling. 5. Izuku was kneeling, with both his gloves and his right foot on the ground. 6. The boy was now standing, pushing upward with his buckling legs while raising his upper body. 7. The boy's left foot slipped, but he managed to catch himself and continued to stand shakily. 8. He managed to raise his chest above his waist and was at last starting to raise his upper body. Ippo saw his eyes, blazing with the sign that he was alive, until 9. Izuku collapsed onto the mat again, his eyes going blank as he eventually passed out. 10. Shouted the referee. The winner is Makunouchi Ippo. Kamigawa walked into the ring beside Ippo, who was observing Kato escort Izuku to an infirmary. As his pupil kept observing him, he remarked, that kid was strong, huh? Ippo replied, still gasping, yeah. If he had held on just a few more seconds, I would have lost. After the fight with Date, Ippo saw a younger version of himself instead of Izuku being carried out, and he said, I'm ready for his attempt at the belt. He remembered Izuku's resolve as he stepped into the ring, and Ippo saw his own in his eyes on the day he faced Sendo. He now knew what it was like to face that much will and spirit. Eventually, Izuku's eyes opened, seemingly in another medical facility. He sat up and glanced around, noting that it was even more advanced than the best medical facility in the United Arab Emirates and far more advanced than those back in Japan. He took a deep breath and thought about the match he had just played against Ippo. Izuku said, "Thank you, Makanouchi-san." Then he heard the door open. Momo and Melissa entered, each carrying something behind their backs. "Hey girls," said Izuku. Lost." "That's all right, Izuku. At least he knows that you're ready to challenge him for the title belt." Melissa responded. "Indeed, I have faith that when you challenge him for real, you'll be able to defeat him." Momo concluded. "Thanks. On another note, why do you both have your hands hidden?" he inquired. Melissa and Momo smiled and held out their hands, showing several boxes. Momo held a briefcase that resembled the costume cases from UA, and Melissa held a long black box. "I wanted help making you a new costume, so I had Melissa-san stay behind with me," Momo said, passing the case to Izuku. He took a green-stringed black zip-up jacket with sleeves rolled down below the elbow from the case. In addition, he produced a pair of loose-fitting green pants with black stripes that resembled his new boxing trunks and the bottoms already rolled up to his shins. A green bandana with a hollow black X in front completed the ensemble. The bandana actually has an internal filter weaved into the fabric for breathing in rougher areas, and the clothes have silicon carbide discs and ballistic fiber weaved in as well, explained Momo. It can stop bullets and other weapons villains can use, but it's still going to hurt on impact and is still weak against stabbing. He grinned when the two women said, "We don't want you to get seriously injured, Izuku." Izuku said, "Thank you." He questioned, "But, what's in the other box?" "Before meeting you two, it would take months to make the materials I usually use in order to create technology like the full gauntlets. With Momo-san's help, I was able to get those materials much faster." As a result, she opened the case to reveal two gauntlets. He couldn't quite place the difference between these and the old ones, but they had the same design, red color, and detailing. "These come with a unique feature that can be accessed through wearing your tape underneath," she explained. Izuku put the gauntlet over his right hand after wrapping it in the special boxing tape. The gauntlet took the tape in his hand and glowed when he turned it on. The gauntlet was white when he looked at it again. After realizing what was going on, he turned it on as though it were just the tape. He grinned as he saw a green boxing glove over the gauntlet. Izuku put them back into bracelet and tape form and asked, "So you combined the tape and the gauntlets?" "Yep. Now you can fight with either three forms depending on how much damage you want to do or how you want to fight. We also modified your shoes to have traction anywhere you go, so your fighting style isn't impaired in environments like ice," Melissa replied. Izuku put a gentle hand on her shoulder and pulled her down a little for a chaste kiss on the lips, saying, "Now your boxing style is effective on any type of land." With gratitude. He kissed Momo with gratitude and said, "Thank you so much, Melissa. Momo, you two have done so much for me in my hero dream." "Thank you. We did this to make sure you stay alive, Izuku. We want nothing more than for you to make it back to us every time you go to fight, so we chose to make you this to further that goal. Besides, the darker green and black color scheme works better than the old costume you had. You looked like you were out for training instead of saving people," Momo said, causing the young boxer to giggle. They hugged him in response to his statement. "Fair point. I'll do my best to stay safe. As safe as my career choices will let me be, of course." After a week, the remainder of the week saw the release of information regarding Professor Shield and Sam. Professor David Shield was placed under strict probation whenever he was in a laboratory after being accused of conducting unlawful research and conspiring with villains. Sam received a 10-year jail sentence after being arrested on charges of villain collusion and endangerment of the public for bringing actual villains to the island. Melissa had cried because she considered Sam to be family, but she was able to get over her feelings with Momo and Izuku by her side. Together, the three of them went on dates, with Melissa showing them the more enjoyable areas of the island that Wolfram had not destroyed. They were even noticed by Godzilla, who exchanged his autograph for Izuku's. Fortunately for the trio, Ippo was reportedly close by to divert the fans' attention, so Izuku was only stopped 3 times. Izuku and Momo were spotted holding Melissa's hands in front of their plane at the end of the week. "We promise we'll call you sometime this week," Izuku replied. "You better. I might be able to squeeze in a vacation to Japan in a few months, so I'm just letting you know now, Izuku. She glanced at Momo. You should call too. I love discussing molecular technology and more uses in quirk support it can provide. Melissa responded. Izuku responded to the first part of her statement by saying, it's a date. Momo teased, sure, I need someone who knows more than just heroes and punching. Hey, heroes and punching things is our job. It doesn't hurt to know a little more than necessary. He grumbled. The first thing that Momo and Melissa did when they saw this was say, ah, Izuku. And glomp him from both sides while laughing. Izuku and Momo finally said their final goodbyes and got on their plane to head back. After 2 days of rest, Aizawa called the students back to class. Mina and Kaminari, who had failed, screamed with excitement when Aizawa said, okay, so I have some news. Everyone is going on the trip. However, he exclaimed, cutting off their applause. When he said, those of you who failed will undergo even harsher training to catch up to your peers. Mina's happy cry changed to one of fear. Now then, we changed location last second for security. I'm not telling you where it is, but you all should pick up a list of recommended supplies before you leave. I need a nap, Aizawa said as she left the room. Hey guys, we should all go together to get the camp stuff, said Toru. Hiroshima glanced at the list and remarked, great idea. I need a bunch of stuff. How about we all meet at Kiyoshi Ward Mall tomorrow and get our stuff? Izuku replied. Tokiyami replied, I agree. Let's say 11 o'clock in the morning. Iida said, okay, we have a plan. Do not be late, and the class broke up. The following day, based on their needs, the students divided into groups at the Kiyoshi Ward Mall. Izuku turned to face Momo, who was holding on to his arm, and said, come to think of it, you can make everything on the list, right? I can, but it's not often I'm able to go out and have fun with my friends and boyfriend. She replied. As he watched Kaminari and Mineta get thrown into orbit by some women they were attempting to court, he remarked, this is pretty fun. I'll be right back, I'm getting a drink, Momo replied. Izuku replied, okay, I'll just wait here. Izuku was reviewing his list when she departed. Alright, I have insect repellent. I just need a sleeping bag. He was interrupted by the appearance of a hooded figure. Put his arm around his shoulder and exclaimed, are you the boxer Izuku Midoriya? Dude, I'm such a fan. As he said, again, Izuku felt 4 fingers encircle his neck, clenching his fists in preparation for a battle. I love that you were able to survive against the hero killer dude. I never thought I'd be able to see you again. Izuku then instantly recalled the voice of the man who led the assault against him in 1A in the USJ raid, and when he looked up, he saw a dry, wrinkled face with a smile. I wonder why we were able to meet again. Is it fate? Destiny? I'm not sure, but what I do remember was you somehow being able to beat the shit out of my All Might. Izuku was pulled to sit beside a small planted tree by Shigaraki Tamura, who said, come with me for some tea. Izuku glared at the villain and said, what do you want? He answered, I just want you to answer a question. The boxer declared, if you attack me, a hero will stop you. Izuku chose to comply, and the man said, but before that happens, how many civilians can I kill? 10, 20, I just want to talk. I hate many things, society, people, authority. However, above all else, I hate the hero killer. But, I thought he was a part of your league. Izuku replied. That was media speculation. He was never part of the league. Everything I've worked for recently has been overshadowed by him, and I want to know, what makes me different from Stain? Izuku stated cautiously, well, the main difference is that Stain has an ideal. He works to force a specific ideology into society through his actions, one that can be understood. As much as I hate it, me and Stain are similar. Both of us are inspired by All Might and everything he stands for. Stain didn't destroy just because he wanted to, like you are, but he killed so that society would be able to see his ideology and change for the better, or at least better according to his ideals. I do respect that Stain worked to uphold and not let go of his ideals, but I disagree with the killings and the death that he used as a result. He clarified, and Shigaraki understood. Confusing Izuku, he said, you know, I get it now. Shigaraki came to the conclusion, I understand why you and him piss me the fuck off. It's All Might. He gripped his neck a little tighter and said, the answer was so close, yet I never realized it. I hate society because everyone in it is grinning the same infuriating way that he is. Thanks for the chat. When Momo showed up holding 2 bottles of green tea, Izuku's eyes widened. To whom is he speaking? As she approached, she pondered. He tried to tell her to keep away as he looked into her eyes. He muttered, "Don't try and chase me." After releasing Izuku's neck, she got up and began to leave, saying, "Niece talking to you." Sorry for the interruption. Izuku turned to Shigaraki and held his neck as Momo hurried over to him. When he said, "Shigaraki Tamura, what is all for one's goal?" the villain halted. Momo yelled, "Shigaraki Tamura," and turned on creation. He vanished into the crowd, saying, "Don't know, don't care. Take care, you'll be dead next time we meet." Momo immediately dialed the police. After the police searched the area for the villain, Detective Naomasa showed up, sitting with Izuku in the police station. The detective inquired, "What did he say? Did he reveal any information on his location or next actions?" "No, he said nothing new. All he did was ask why people focused more on Stain than the League, and I answered." Izuku replied. Izuku was then released, leaving the hospital to unveil All Might in his slender form. In any case, thank you for being able to stay calm in that scenario. I know it must have been frightening, but you prevented collateral damage and civilian casualties. Young Midoriya, forgive me. I wasn't there to help you, he replied. After recalling what Tamura had said, he made the decision to ask All Might, "It's fine, All Might. There was no way you would have known." The symbol of peace put a hand on the boxer's shoulder and shadowed his eyes, asking, "Was there ever a time where you weren't able to save someone?" When a limo pulled up in front of Izuku, the window rolled down to reveal Momo and her parents. "As great a hero as people see me, I'm only human. I can't save everyone. However, being the symbol of peace allows me to save more people because I serve as inspiration for heroes to be better and for people to have hope." Her father said, "Hello Izuku. We're here to take you home." Izuku got into the limousine, and the 4 of them drove to Izuku's house. Izuku recounted the incident to them, and Momo's mother remarked, "That sounds like a very dangerous situation to be in, being so close to a villain." Her father answered, "If you need security, we can help you get bodyguards if you need any." "I'm all right," Izuku remarked, "I can defend myself. It's just, right now, I would prefer to think of something else. So why don't we introduce ourselves to you?" Turning right, Momo's father said, "My name is Yosuke Yaoyorozu. Generation is my quirk. I can turn any part of my body into a mechanical device by using the fats in it. For instance, I can use my legs or enormous mechanical fists to make a motorcycle. Since I took over the business 20 years ago, we have expanded from quirk-based apparel to include items for heroes and those with quirks or drawbacks that are hard to control, such as special glasses for people with echolocation quirks or a portable cooling system for magma skin." He remarked, "I fell in love at first sight when I met Momo's mother 18 years ago while visiting one of my facilities." Momo's mother responded, "Dear, it took 20 tries before I considered going on a date with you. Do you regret it, though?" He smiled as he asked. "With that mindset. In any case, my name is Akira Yaoyorozu," she said, chuckling softly afterward. "Molecular blueprint is my quirk, which allows me to determine the molecular basis of anything I've seen. When Momo's father came in to check on us, I was working in advanced R&D. At first, I thought his advances were unbearable, but after persistent nagging, I gave him a chance. I then gave Yosuke advice on how to expand by letting him know what he needed to make the things he wanted to make. Within a year of our marriage, I became pregnant with Momo. We've reached our destination," she declared, and Izuku looked up from a notebook to realize they were in front of his house. Yosuke remarked, "Anyway, we'll see you around. Good luck in your upcoming matches. Learning more about you was pleasant," Izuku said, waving to them as he walked to his door. The boxer smiled as he entered his home, cheering at what had transpired with Melissa and Ippo, and he went to bed that night looking happy. With Tamura, Tamura went back to the League's base and took a seat at the bar where Kurogiri was. "I assume that your mission was accomplished." The man with the blue hair smiled as he asked. "Yes, I know what I'm fighting for because of that kid," he said. "And that's what it would be. A world in which All Might has passed away. Get Sensei on the line, Kurogiri." A moment later, a purple TV screen came to life, revealing his master's outline. "And what do you want, Tamura?" did he ask. I need the unique unit that we have been developing at the warehouse, Sensei. We can prepare his brother for our next adventure if we can convince him enough, he said. Oh, what would those plans be? Sensei inquired. A society in which all might and the vile ideal he espouses are extinct. That's what I want. The morning after, and I eventually got to face the featherweight champion following the villain attack. The fight was incredible. Izuku glanced over at his unconscious mother and said, "Anyway, our class has a training camp. I wish you were there to see it." Izuku said, "I'll be back as soon as I can." After leaving the hospital with a backpack and a duffel bag filled with his essential equipment, the young boxer headed to Ua, where he watched his class begin to fill up in one of two buses. Iida was escorting the remaining 1A students onto their own bus, while Izuku stepped on and sat down next to Momo. As the bus began to move, the students started talking to each other. Izuku was wrapping his hands when Suyu remarked, "I saw your fight earlier this week, Hiro." "Really? What were your thoughts?" As Kirishima and Mina joined in, he posed the question. "That champion looked tough, but you were really awesome, bro." Kirishima uttered those words. "Yes, Midori, you were incredible. You gave me the impression that it was the real title match for a brief moment." Mina continued. Izuku said, "You can say that. I entered that fight to prove to Makanouchi-san that I am capable of competing for the title. I'm hoping he received that message." "Izuku, I'm positive he did." Momo leaned her head against Izuku's and said, "Now we can look forward to the title match, whenever that may be." The bus abruptly stopped, and Izuku turned to face Aizawa in front of them. Aizawa informed the pupils, "We're 3 miles away from the camp." "All right, we stopped, but why?" Kaminari inquired. Suddenly, 1A and 1B were ejected from the buses, and Aizawa watched them while holding all of their bags motionless. Aizawa said, "You're walking the rest of the way there." The two buses then drove away, with some people attempting to catch up with them before they were too far away. "What do we do, damn it?" Izuku was now wearing his pink training outfit, so Mineta slowed down and pulled out the full gauntlets in their bracelet form, placing them over his wrapped wrists. "Now," he said. Izuku laced his boxing shoes and said, "Good thing I was prepared." Momo was nearby, making a matching tracksuit and running shoes, and they were ready to run through the forest when the ground shook, warning the students. They huddled together to see enormous dirt golems emerge from the ground. Izuku smiled, activated the full gauntlets over his wraps, blending the two into the new form Melissa created, and charged in with one for all while Momo remained behind with a rocket launcher. "Looks like we're fighting out way there then. Take a cue from them." The two classes started fighting their way to the camp after Itsuka shouted to the others. After 8 hours later, both classes finally arrived at the camp, exhausted and sore from fighting golems all day. Izuku and Momo, on the other hand, were fine because Kato had given them additional boxing training. Mina looked up from where she was lying on the floor, and Izuku remarked, "Never thought we'd be in the Beast's Forest." Are you familiar with this location?" She gasped for air. "It's because of his damn hero otaku hobby." Bakugo continued, "He's studied heroes so damn much that he knows where every hero and hero team is." "Hold on. Do you recall that?" Izuku inquired, genuinely taken aback. "Because you muttered that shit in class every time," the feisty teenager answered. The students turned to see Aizawa standing next to a group of 4 heroes who were all themed around cats. "Good observation. Keep these dazzling eyes on you. We're here to assist and lend a hand." Suddenly appearing, adorably adorable and feline, crazy pussycats. After saying this, the 4 struck a lively group pose, to Izuku's cheers. He recalled watching videos of Pixie Bob reacting to people remembering her age and thought, after doing some research on her, "I feel like mentioning how long they were at work would be a bad thing." He also noticed a tired little boy wearing a red cap with horns next to them. "Hi there, are you okay?" The child swung a foot up toward his sacred area, but Izuku managed to catch his kick as he asked. Mandalay, the red pussycat with short brown hair, told the child, "Kota, that's not nice." Before he stormed off, he declared, "I hate heroes." What was the purpose of that? When the boy arrived at the pussycat's cabin, Izuku asked her. "I apologize for that, I'll tell you more later," she said, referring to Kota, her nephew. "You kids will go get food after carrying your bags to your room. Following that, you can unwind at the bathhouse." The 1A teacher declared, "The training starts tomorrow." The students chose to comply with his directives and started packing their bags. I hope to write some chapters this summer and perhaps another for my Shield Hero FIC, if you guys are interested in that. It's currently a one-shot of Naofumi and the Queen. Welcome back. It's been a long time, huh? I was going to wrap this up later, but I thought that would make it too long, and I also wanted to add more omakes, though my ideas for them die the moment I try to write them. Winking face. P.S. I was just thinking about this, and I'm not sure if you guys would be okay with it, but if I said that it was specifically non-canon to this fixed storyline, and I'm stressing this, not canon to the fixed storyline, would you guys be up for a chapter devoted to a giant lemon? Let me know. In any case, I love reading your thoughts, so please follow, favorite, and review. See you in the next chapter. Omake. Master of Prediction I. After living together for a month, Class 1A discovered that their resident boxer had a frightening hidden talent, the ability to make predictions. What was frightening about this talent was not that he was always right, but rather that he was always right. At the moment, the class, excluding Izuku and Momo, was sitting around the common room, reciting a few of the predictions the boxer had made. Hiroshima recalled a time when he and Midoriya were up against Ojiro and Sato in a team battle. Izuku said abruptly, confusing the boy, "Ojiro is going to jump at you to distract both of us while Sato attacks you from behind." What's the reason behind that? Thinking Izuku's prediction was accurate, Hiroshima turned around and saw a sugar-powered fist slam into Ojiro, who was now in the same place as Hirošima's head, and he had to throw his body to the side as a large object, that object being Ojiro, flew past him with a flying kick. He thought, wait, what? Because his brother's prediction was spot on. Momo and Izuku were in her room listening to Jiro's musical prowess as she played the guitar. He pointed to Jiro's underwear drawer and said, "Jiro-san, I think Mineta's in your drawers." That one, to be exact, and holding a bra. She put down her guitar and asked, "How would you know?" Jiro gave in, and Momo said, "Izuku's really good at predictions. I think you should trust him." A startled Mineta was clutching one of her bras when she approached and opened her underwear drawer. Before Jiro screamed and mercilessly stabbed him with her earphone jacks, Mineta said, "Fuck." One day at lunch, after learning about Jiro and Kirishima's experiences, Todoroki asked, "Midoriya-kun, how are your predictions so accurate?" The boxer answered, "I don't know. It just kinda happens. But what I do know is that Momoma's about to try and make fun of Kachan." As Monoma approached their fiery classmate smugly and slowly, Todoroki remarked, "You don't need to predict that." Izuku stated, "I wasn't finished." They heard a little girl screaming right away, who turned out to be Monoma, who was now on the ceiling after Uraraka's zero-gravity quirk struck him from behind. He's gonna try and provoke Monoma, but Uraraka-san will stop him with her quirk in 3, 2, 1. As Izuku casually returned to eating his katsudon, Todoroki thought, "Scary." As Izuku entered the room, the other students watched, and Tokiyami remarked, "Scary indeed." "What's up?" he put it. "We're just talking about how scarily accurate your predictions are," Jiro replied. The boxer responded, "Oh, that. It's not that had to explain, actually. It's because of my training," he clarified when they all appeared perplexed. "One part of my style is counters, which rely on me reading the opponent to see their next moves. When I've seen a person for long enough, or have been in contact with someone for long enough, I can predict exactly how that person will react or act next." He continued, "For example, Mina-chan's going to pout as she says, and I quote, 'That's bullshit,' followed by Toru-san nodding her head in agreement. 'That's bullshit,' Mina sulked, and Toru nodded silently in agreement. They both froze, and so did everyone else who wasn't Momo or Izuku. Mina's eyes widened as Toru remarked, "He was right." I nodded. "So, since you've lived with us for a month now, you can read us," replied Ojiro. "I don't want to sound cocky or arrogant, but this is the only way I know how to describe it." Izuku responded, "Essentially, I can read all of you like books." Frightful. 1. A fear of the actual strength of this boxer's untapped talent. The students had time to explore the bathhouses after putting their bags away. It was to be used in a class-specific order, with 1A coming first. A huge wooden wall divided the boys' and girls' sides, and they were both lounging in the bathhouse's steaming water. Izuku sank into the water with a heavy sigh of relief. He paused, then heard a yell. He turned to see Mineta standing in front of the wall, staring at them. Mineta pointed to the sky and yelled, "Don't you get it, boys? On the other side is heaven." Mina's thick thighs, Uraraka's toned stomach, Yaoyorozu's gigantic breasts, all of those are right behind this wall. "And I will be the one to witness heaven," he screamed. Iida shouted, "Mineta-san, control yourself." But Mineta refused to listen. Reaching the other side of the wall was the purple pervert's only goal. "Can it? Robot legs. Momo's titties are on the other side, and I gotta get a peek," she exclaimed. Because of his tenacity, he threw 2 hair balls onto the wall and started to climb until the overwhelming sense of death and bloodlust overcame him and made him stop altogether. He slowly turned around to find Izuku staring at him with a hollow smile that promised endless suffering. The boxer clenched his fists behind his back and said, "Mineta-san. I started to gain respect for you after the Island attack. Please, don't make me take it back." But Mineta sensed an implied, "or else," in Izuku's voice. Now he was faced with a choice. Look at the boxer's girlfriend nude and get turned into grape juice, or turn away from heaven and try to attract hot babes with his status as Midoriya's friend. He turned away from the wall and backed off into the water, deciding that the long-term possibility of becoming Midoriya's friend was worth more than a fleeting glance. Momo said from the opposite side of the wall, "Thanks, Izuku." As the purple pervert retreated, Kota remained atop the wall, waiting for him to ascend. Kota said, "Can I get some help?" And Izuku approached the wall. After turning on One for All, he leapt to the top of the wall and used his right hand to grab hold of it. Kota was about to balance his way to Izuku when Mina's voice diverted their attention. "Here, I'll help," she teased, "Hey boys," as both of them turned to face the voice. As a result, the two were able to see the paradise Mineta was describing, where Mina was sitting on a rock in the open steamy air while the majority of the girls were submerged in the water. The majority of what they were blocking was still visible, and Izuku and Kota both had red faces. Izuku leapt from the wall to catch Kota as he slipped due to the shock and awe. While descending, the boxer swiveled so that Izuku would land upright with Kota in his arms, unconscious from fear of the fall and the shock of seeing the girls. The cabin office later, Kota was dozing on a bed when Mandalay said, "Thank you, Midoriya-kun." "You're welcome. I do have to ask though, why is it that Kota doesn't like heroes? I remember that he called them dumb earlier today, and I just wanted to know why, if that's alright with you," Izuku asked, and the elderly lady sighed. "As you've noticed, he doesn't have the highest opinion of heroes. To be honest, he would have idolized them like any other kid if it wasn't for what had happened to his parents," she responded. He inquired, "What happened to them?" His parents were the hero team Water Hose, who were killed protecting civilians from a powerful villain known as Muscular. Pixie Bob replied. Izuku recalled their funerals being televised a few years prior, saying, "I remember that. Everyone called them true heroes at the public service. That was 2 years ago, right?" "Yeah." While that was true, Kota took it much differently. He started to blame heroes for their deaths, because he believes that his parents abandoned him in favor of being heroes. As you can see, that led to his current resentment of them. "The only reason he came to live with us is because I'm the only family he has left," said Mandalay. Shigaraki Tamura feels the same way about heroes. But Kota is not like him at all. After saying goodbye to them and heading back to the student lodges, the boxer thought, "I'll try and talk to him later, see if I can help him out." The following day, following the Pussycats' briefing to 1A and 1B, the students were divided into groups to concentrate on various facets of quirk training in an effort to go beyond their comfort zones. Shiozaki Ibara and Kanoko Komori from 1B, for instance, were practicing their plant-based quirks to increase their output. The former was spreading vines as far as she could, while the latter was spreading as many spores as she could physically handle. To improve their combat skills, more physically fit fighters such as Ojiro, Itsuka, and Sato would spar with Tiger. To get his attention, Tiger said, "Midoriya-kun." The boy was practicing agility and speed by performing simple leg exercises as quickly as he could with his current One for All limit, since the boxer already had a high level of combat training because he was a professional boxer. The boxer took a gulp from a water bottle and asked, "What is it?" "Our original plan was for me to spar with you like I do with some of the other students, but a week before the camp we received a call from 2 people who wanted to meet you," the male pussycat replied. "From who?" I'm sure you know them. They should be here right about now. Tiger replied. Izuku jumped back to avoid a jolt haymaker that appeared where he had been when he caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. A figure wearing a pink tracksuit and green boxing gloves, exactly the same outfit Izuku wore for training, was the source. The boy had to dodge a ball of glowing energy that appeared from behind before he could comprehend this. Turning, he saw another figure with a green cannon on the right arm, dressed in red, orange, and yellow armor. Izuku turned to Tiger and said, "Wait, no." His eyes glowed like stars. The man laughed when he asked, "Are you sure this isn't a dream?" Izuku turned back to the two figures, who then identified themselves. "Nope. They told me they were impressed by your skills, and wanted to help you with your training." A man wearing the same boxing suit Izuku once wore was revealed when the figure in the tracksuit threw it off. This man had tan skin, black hair swept up, and was about his height. Apart from All Might, this man was Izuku's personal hero, which is why he even decided to dress in his ring and tracksuit. Little Mac, the youngest boxer to defeat the world heavyweight champion, was this man. The fact that the man was a flyweight, a weight class beneath his own, was the aspect that caused Izuku to revere him almost as much as All Might. The armor changed into a ball at her side, and the figure beside the man took it off. This individual was a woman of Tiger's height wearing a blue jumpsuit and carrying a stun pistol holstered on her right leg. Samus, the bounty hero, was this woman. Izuku abruptly held out a notebook and pen for them to sign, saying, "It's an honor to meet you." With a smile, Max signed the book by removing his right glove. He glanced at Samus, who took the pen and, laughing lightly, added her own signature. With a distinct Japanese accent, she said, "It's an honor to meet you too, Midoriya." "Sorry, I'm not the best at Japanese." The two were relieved when Izuku said in that language, "That's all right, I can speak English too." She inhaled deeply and said, "Oh, thank God. I thought I was gonna have to struggle trying to communicating with you." Mac added, "Yee." Izuku said, "So, you two came here, for me?" "Yee, pretty much. We saw your fights, and Mac here said that you reminded him of his 2-year career, so he wanted to help you out." Samus responded. "Yee." As Mac replaced his glove, Izuku said, "Well, thank you. How will we begin?" Mac said, "Dodge." Samus pulled out her stun gun. Izuku tried his best to dodge the approaching lasers as she began to fire at him. The boy was a little startled when one struck his arm. Izuku thought, "Ouch, it's similar to the gym punching machine, except that this time I dodge rather than punch." All right, he used one for all at 15%, dodging and swerving between the explosions, until a left hook nearly hit his face, forcing him to roll to the right. "It won't be as easy as just dodging lasers, Midoriya," Samus replied. "We have Mac punching at you to symbolize that, to be a reminder that you need to be wary of your surroundings. Maintaining spatial awareness is absolutely necessary in this profession, especially since you have to make sure civilians are out of potential danger." Izuku nodded, stretching briefly before lowering himself back into his fighting stance and activating 15%. Izuku slammed his gloves together and said, "If that's the price of becoming stronger, then let's go." For the next 2 hours, Samus would keep shooting at Izuku while he was dodging with one for all activated. Mac would also throw a punch for every 3 shots fired, and those hit much more frequently than the lasers. Izuku had to prioritize avoiding the former boxer's fists at the expense of getting shocked by Samus. Halfway through the session, Izuku came up with a plan. He would use a tree in the clearing as a reference to give himself more time to react, taking blows only when he believed they would strike that one tree. When the session was over, Izuku was leaned against the tree he was using as a reference while taking deep breaths. Izuku looked up as she said, "Good job, kid." He was still exhausted from the training when he said, Thanks. "We still have something else to do before you're done," Samus replied. "What would that be?" Izuku inquired. Samus said, "I want you to watch Mac. Knowing how to fight against boxers is one thing, but using that skill against villains is quite another. If you think you might be able to learn from this, I want you to watch because Mac knows how to be creative with his style." Izuku stated, "I'm ready when he is." He turned to face Mac, who was facing a punching bag. Tiger left the area to go back to the main training area, saying, "I have to train the other students." "Keep it up, Midoriya-kun. This is more or less a simple lesson," she replied. Mac gave a nod. During the session, the retired boxer was watching Midoriya, and thus far, the boy has proven to be everything he had anticipated. quick-witted, perceptive, and compassionate in nature. To a certain degree, Mac recognized himself in the younger boxer. Mac punched his way to the heavyweight class champion at the time, Mr. Sandman, using a mix of slugging, outboxing, and infighting. Mac saw that the boy was doing the same to advance in the featherweight class during his bouts. He saw that, at least in part, the boy wasn't doing it for the money. Because of an interview he did a year ago, he had read up on the boy and discovered that his money was divided in half. Half will go to charity, 1/4 will go to his sick mother, and the remaining 1/4 will probably be used for living expenses. Compared to other boxers he had faced in the past, that showed a less self-centered goal in the boy. In light of what he was now witnessing, Mac developed a respect for the boxer. He therefore wished to assist him in training so that he would be better equipped to face any opponent. Weight was the only problem. Mac knew that the boy would have to start weight control soon because he was getting close to the featherweight limit, which was terrible. However, he still wanted to train the boy because he wanted him to develop as much fighting skills as possible before then. Mac said, assuming his fighting stance, watch. He had his legs spread wide to adapt his footwork in any circumstance, his back bent forward, and his gloves up to his face. The bag flew a short distance after Mac threw it a 1-2. The bag bounced off the floor into the air as Mac rushed up and grabbed it before it landed, slamming 3 punches into it before grabbing his hands and slamming them down. The boxer then leapt where it was landing and quickly arced his fist to keep it in the air. He then landed and leapt again, this time with a spinning uppercut that sent the bag and the former boxer skyward. He raised the bag once more, effectively resetting it, and briefly turned to face Izuku. Izuku turned back to Mac after completing the combo sketch. Before he heard Mac grunt again, he muttered to himself, that looked like a really powerful combo. I'll have to figure out a way to adapt it, maybe I can use kicks as well. Quote. Izuku incorporated the former boxer's signature punch of the ko-puncha into his own moveset after witnessing him stretch his right arm and test fire it. With his fist nearly scraping the ground, Mac squatted down and punched, sending the bag flying. Once it was in the air, he let it tear, sending it sailing into one of the trees in the clearing. He put it in front of him once more and rushed forward. After grabbing the bag and punching it forward, Mac ran up to it, jabbed it twice, and finished his combo with the ko-punch as it was just bouncing off the ground. Izuku marveled at his superior's unadulterated strength. He was aware that the man was at his best during his title defense years, but that was in accordance with boxing regulations. The former champion continued to train and spar with friends after retiring, which only made him stronger in the years that followed. The young boxer was already memorizing the attack sequences and mentally crafting some of his own. Izuku got up after the display and shut his notebook. That's all for today. Meet back here tomorrow, and we'll practice using the combos you learned today. The petite brunette replied. Both trainers listened as Izuku said, actually, I have a request. I do want to learn these combos, but can we also work on my endurance? In the ring, I learned that I'm weak against damage accumulated over time, so I want to work to improve that. Izuku replied. She said, I can think of something we can do. Mac nodded. After leaving the clearing, Izuku vowed to have seen a red shape there, but it vanished before he could identify it. With a shrug, the boxer went back to the main camp. He heard a woman say, "Hey, Midoriya-san." He looked over and saw Itsuka Kendo standing there looking a little uneasy. I just wanted to ask this, but can I train a little with you? My quirk focuses on my fists, so I thought that training with someone who boxes would be beneficial. She replied. Alright, I just need a ring, and some gear for you. Izuku replied. When he turned around, he saw Tiger finishing the wooden ring he was creating by laying some planks of wood on the ground. The ropes were real ropes, and the turnbuckles were wooden poles with some padding on them. There was a table with a bell on it next to the solid wood mat. Momo set down a pair of mitts and an additional pair of gloves and tape. As Izuku slowly took a bite out of a burger and turned to leave, Momo said plainly, maintaining a straight-faced gaze into her eyes, making the gear as part of my training too. Itsuka remarked, that was odd. She shook her head and Izuku assisted her in wrapping her hands in boxing tape. True, but anyways, get in the ring. You know how to wrap your hands in boxing tape, right? She said. Itsuka stood in front of him wearing gloves as he put on the mitts and entered the ring. He raised a left mitt, which she struck with her right, and vice versa. Okay, it's easy. Punch my mitts with the opposing fists, and duck when I swing towards your head. Before accelerating, he started out slowly to make sure she found a comfortable rhythm. His hands were all over his face, his stomach, the sides, and any place his arms could reach. He would occasionally swing at her head to check if she was alert, but only the first 2 times he struck. He exclaimed, 1-2. And she delivered a left-right combo, slamming her fists into the mitts. Again, she struck it in the same manner once more before abruptly avoiding a mid-swing that was directed at her face. Good job, Kendo-san. She departed after saying, thanks, Midoriya-san. It's been an honor to train with you. When Izuku heard a bell ring in the camp, he went to the cabins and saw the pussycats standing next to a lot of food items, including meats, vegetables, and cooking supplies. Now, I know you were all probably tired from making your way over here yesterday, but from tonight until you leave the camp, you will have to cook dinner for yourselves. Pixie Bob replied, additionally, it enables me to look for a possible spouse for when they reach legal adulthood. This is the perfect opportunity for students to learn how to cook in the wild. I suggest we make curry. Iida responded. As his girlfriend gave him a startled look, Izuku said, sorry Iida-kun, but I'm making katsudon. Momo, you want some? She said, Izuku, you can cook. Meanwhile, Bakugo, who was chopping nearby like a professional chef, was being questioned in the same way by Uraraka. As Bakugo grudgingly blew up some firewood beneath a metal stove to provide heat, Izuku said, yeah. When you live on your own for a few years, you pick up a few tricks. Kachan, gimme a hand. When Izuku was done breading the pork cutlet, Momo prepared a fryer for him. I always wondered how Yaoyorozu's quirk worked. Shiro replied. Izuku put the bowl of cleaned rice on the stove to cook and explained, if Momo knows the molecular makeup of an object, she can use her fat cells to create that object. Momo froze when Shiro said, so like poop. Her face was in her hands as she fell to her knees. Now somewhat ashamed of her eccentricity, Momo remarked, I never thought of it like that. My bad, Yaoyo, the overwhelming presence of death's return interrupted Shiro. With the same emotionless smile from the previous day, Izuku said, Shiro-san. In an attempt to avoid passing away while still a teenager, Shiro said, I'm sorry. Izuku turned back to complete katsudon after nodding. He gave Momo a bowl and was ready to start eating when 2 figures showed up. In English, Samus remarked, I always wanted to try some of the local foods. Have any to spare? Her stun pistol was still by her side, and she was dressed in a blue sports bra and skin-tight blue shorts. Green gloves slung over his shoulder as Little Mac, dressed in a pink tracksuit, emerged beside her. Izuku answered in English, I have a little bit extra. I think I can make another bowl or 2. Thanks. Said Samus. They tucked into the 2 bowls of katsudon he handed them. She remarked, this is pretty good. Mac, who was halfway through, added, Yee. You wouldn't happen to have a notebook entry on those 2, would you? Replied Momo. Izuku took out a notebook after the 2 thanked each other and departed. Of course. Was his response. Momo took it and opened the page he indicated, exposing drawings and entries on both of them. McCarter, Samus Aran, 29 years old, hero status, active. Hero rank as of right now, 31 in America. Quirk, Metroid. The user can call forth a green, extraterrestrial-like creature that acts as a devoted pet to help. The user has to wait a day after it dies before calling it back. Unless it is killed, a creature can be brought back and called upon at any time. When it latches onto opponents, it appears to have the same stun ability as her gun, and Samus treats it the same way she would a dog or cat. Because of her quirk, this heroine started her career 8 years ago as Samus, the Metroid hero. Her hero suit, which allowed for greater mobility, offensive power, and defensive capability, was made possible by combining military training from her early years in the American military with support companies across America. McCarter, Jason, Little Mac, 25 years old. Boxing status. No longer active. Former heavyweight champion of the world. Ratio of wins to losses. 32-3, 32 co. Adrenaline is a quirk that allows the user to transform their body's natural adrenaline into raw strength. The user of this quirk gains enough physical strength to withstand some strong, and occasionally fatal, blows and ignore flinching from those hits, in contrast to the strength that comes from a typical adrenaline rush. To put it more simply, the quirk basically grants the user super armor, which is typically found in fighting video games. The drawback of this is that the user remains stoic all the time because they do not experience natural adrenaline rushes. Personality. Uses body language and actions to communicate more than words. His wife usually says what he wants to say in his place after they get married. At the age of 17, Little Mac began his career and quickly became well-known. In the WVBA, the boxing organization that existed before the QBA, Quirk Boxing Association, boxers were ranked according to their win-loss ratio rather than their weight class or physical prowess. Within a year of beginning his career, Little Mac was able to defeat the champion and punch his way up to world class, which was an odd rank for a worldwide boxing association. He fought them again in the second year, occupying another year. His trainer said he would retire after 3 losses in his last year of boxing, which he achieved after 1 last year. The Metroid hero Samus announced their marriage a year later, and his wife occasionally granted Mac a temporary license to help her on missions. After reading the entries on the two, Momo handed the book back to Izuku and closed it. The boxer's record is astounding. How does one achieve a knockout in every fight of their career? Momo responded. His quirk allowed him to survive many blows that would have easily knocked him out, or worse. He was able to take hits from a man several weight classes above him due to this, and even beat them. That, and he has incredible strength for someone of his weight and size, replied Izuku. Amazing. Oh, by the way, Mina-chan said our class and 1B were doing a test of courage in the forest tomorrow night. Would you like to join us? She inquired. Izuku was about to respond when he caught a glimpse of Kota disappearing into the woods. As Izuku put away his dishes and grabbed a bowl of curry to follow Kota, he said, maybe. Something just came up, I'll be back later. Kota's hidden location. A young boy wearing a horned cap stood on a cliff with a view of the rest of the forest. He was just gazing into space while seated at the edge. Before Izuku arrived with a bowl of curry, Kota jumped a little, readying his quirk against whoever it might be, when he heard a bristling from the greenery at the entrance of his secret spot. Hey there, I noticed that you weren't eating earlier. I just followed your footsteps here. Izuku responded. He held water spheres in his hands in an attempt to dissuade Izuku. I don't want anything you're offering me. Just leave me alone, he exclaimed. The boy's eyes widened as he angrily looked at the boxer and said, I remember that your parents had water-type quirks as well. They were Team Water Hose, right? I bet Auntie Mandalay told you that. Izuku answered, no, I had just heard of them before. I'm sorry about what happened to them. Izuku shut his mouth to listen as Kota stated, it's their fault. Heroes, villains, I think both are being gigantic idiots. All they do is use flashy quirks to beat each other up or worse, only for violence against each other and nothing else, said Kota. Izuku inhaled deeply after absorbing this information and approached Kota slowly. The words, let me tell you story, came from Izuku. Instead of listening to the story Izuku told him, Kota became angry and splashed the boxer with water orbs. Years ago, there was a quirkless boy who had nothing. Since he had no power, he chose to reject the reality that he had none by distracting himself in studies and fighting. When this boy learned that having a quirk didn't matter, he was finally able to accept himself and grow into someone stronger. That I mean to say is, please, accept reality for what it is. If you reject it, it will only hurt you further if you keep going on this way. Kota screamed at Izuku, leave me alone. He was furious that a stranger who was undergoing training to become something he detests the most had advised him to simply stop considering heroes and villains to be foolish. Izuku chose to remain silent and set down the bowl of curry he had kept out of the water next to the boy. Izuku finally complied with Kota's request and departed, saying, sorry. The following day, once again, Izuku was with Mac and Samus, undergoing endurance training. To achieve this, Mac made Izuku run for approximately 2 hours straight, with Mac following the boxer. When Izuku ran out of stamina, he was given 3 minutes to catch his breath before running again, until the timer finally stopped. Panting and exhausted, Izuku was then put through standard boxing training, including mitt-work and footwork, with the goal of making him get used to being in a constant state of fatigue, simulating the accumulation of damage over several rounds. Eventually, just like against Ippo, Izuku began to feel the strain of the run add to the strain he had gained from the training. Class 1A was preparing dinner for the others later that night when Izuku turned to Todoroki as they prepared the ingredients. Izuku said, Todoroki-kun, I need advice. For what purpose? The boy inquired. It's Kota. Izuku then told him the whole story of what had happened with the young boy yesterday, including his rage, and told him to leave. To be honest, I would think it was pretentious if someone I didn't know in a field I detested abruptly told me that everything I held to be true was incorrect. Give the child some time. Todoroki remarked. You should have done that before attempting to change everything he believed in. Maybe he'll warm up to you. Yes, you are correct. Izuku apologized for being so intrusive and promised to try to speak with him later. Does that imply that you won't face the courage test later on? We're allegedly frightening the other class. Izuku said, I'm not that scary. Todoroki responded with a deadpan look. I think it would be frightening for anyone to see you standing there looking like you're going to punch them. However, I suppose it's okay if you choose not to participate. Later that evening, at Kota's cliff hideout, the young boy was sitting alone on the cliffside once more. To his annoyance, Izuku stepped outside when he heard a rustling sound in the bushes. You heard me yesterday, didn't you? Get away from me, Kota shouted. As Izuku wrapped his fists in preparation for some independent training after this, he said, I know, but I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I shouldn't have tried to basically change who you were at random yesterday. He was about to continue his apology when he heard a rustling in the bushes, and Kota froze when a giant figure emerged, recognizing that blonde hair and the scar that led to a false eye. Izuku was perplexed as Kota shakily said, It's him. Who are you? Izuku questioned as he activated his full gauntlets, which combined with his tape to form boxing gloves. Muscular is the name. And why am I here? Hee. It ought to be clear. Muscles protruded from his skin and encircled the man's arms and chest. I'm here to watch you bleed, he shouted as he hurried toward the boxer and the boy. In the same moment, Samus turned to the source, pulled out her gun, and aimed as Little Mac and she were patrolling the forest's edge when a blur nearly struck Mac if he hadn't ducked in time. Where is Izuku? Midoriya, they heard from the figure, and as the bloodthirsty man known as Akuma raised his fists, a cruel version of boxing gloves with metal plates over the fists for a much more devastating blow, of blood-red eyes stared at the couple. Little Mac responded by activating his quirk, adrenaline coursing through his body as his fists began to rise. Izuku was only standing when the area turned into a tiny crater, forcing him to leap back. With his deadly smile unwavering, Muscular exclaimed, You're fast. That's great. That means I can have more fun killing you. Izuku shouted, Kota, run. But the boy was paralyzed with terror. The boxer raised his fists in the classic boxing stance and engaged 15%. Izuku was about to slide backwards when Muscular suddenly materialized in front of him. That's the brat water hose had, Don't worry, I'll kill him later. But right now I want to kill you. That was painful, even with my gloves on. Izuku pondered as he watched the antagonist. He must have strength and speed from the extra muscles on his body, but it's amazing how quickly he can add or repair them, he said, clenching his fists. There isn't another option. I have to take him on if I want to defeat him and protect Kota. Rushing towards Muscular, the boxer dodged a blow to his liver with a swing of his left arm. However, the villain simply smiled more broadly without responding. He sent a barrage of punches at Izuku, who used Sixth Sense to dodge, as he added muscle to his body. Izuku dodged a last left in retaliation, intending to strike him in the stomach with a right punch, but one blow sent Izuku hurtling in Kota's direction and he stopped 3 feet from the boy. Then, too preoccupied to stop the left from slamming into his side, Izuku stepped back from a huge right that smashed into the floor once more. However, Izuku refused to back down and slammed a 30% punch into his face. Muscular grabbed Izuku and slammed his body into the stone floor, but he only slightly retreated. The villain slammed the boxer into a crater after he bounced off the floor, coughing up saliva and a little blood. Die, Muscular shouted, building up his muscles before launching a barrage of blows at the boxer. Izuku retaliated by boosting to his current limit of 20% before launching his own volley in an attempt to neutralize the attacks before they could reach him. This is a terrible place. Because he was stuck and couldn't dodge, he thought. He tried to push himself out at the same time as he met fist with fist. Izuku left the crater after a minute of back-to-back punches and muscles burning from increasing exhaustion. Leaning on his back leg to keep from falling, he was panting. His hands remained raised, but his whole body trembled, almost knocking him out. Nevertheless, he hurried back in after activating 50% in his arms. Now this is fun, Muscular exclaimed, The two fists collided with enough force to numb a tiny shockwave as he struck the approaching left head-on with a right. Izuku threw a right, which was met with a left, and then Muscular's quick cross sent Izuku sprawling to the ground as his head snapped to the right. Izuku's eyes widened as Muscular said, "By the way, before I kill you, you mind telling me where Katsuki Bakugo is? The boss is looking for him. They're trying to find Kachan." He let out a mental scream. When he turned, he slipped beneath him and slammed an uppercut kick into his jaw. He had just gotten up when he dodged another strong blow, zooming behind him to deliver a 1-2 to the back. "That hurts," Muscular exclaimed. He then added even more muscles to his arms and torso, and Izuku began to grow a little more frightened. "But that's nowhere near enough to take me down." He launched a sudden assault after slamming his gloved fists together. The boxer was shocked as he slipped forward with each dodge as the villain sidestepped every blow that was thrown at him. Izuku was now facing Muscular, who dodged his frantic left hook and then countered with a left uppercut that launched Izuku skyward. The boxer then spat out some blood after a right cross sent him flying into the cliffside wall. Muscular replaced the fake eye, revealing a black void staring back at Izuku. "You're the first in a long time to actually damage me, kid. I like that, but now it's time to get serious." When the first round of fists hit Izuku, he was too stuck to dodge the villain's move. His punches were delivered with lightning speed and felt like explosions exploding on his skin. Izuku suffered excruciating pain as a result of everything Muscular threw at him. Izuku was only spared from screaming in agony because One for All offered a small amount of additional protection. This, along with his training, helped to some degree. The boxer's body responded appropriately when he recognized the stakes. He became enraged at the thought of what would happen to Kota if he failed, and he used Sixth Sense to control his rage form once more. His gloved fists clenched as he grunted, "I won't let you pass me." Izuku charged Muscular with a 25% charge, then slammed a right cross into his face after a left to the temple. Izuku then attempted to move behind Muscular once more, but was pushed aside by a muscle-boosted arm swing. Izuku roared and decided to leap at him once more, but Muscular threw a strong right to try to grab him. Because he had strengthened his body with muscle prior to the impact, the villain was barely hurt when Izuku slipped past it and delivered a right uppercut and a left to the gut. Then, using speed and power equal to his battles with Akuma and Wolfram, he attempted to defeat Muscular. However, the villain was able to match his tremendous strength with unfathomable speed, confronting Izuku at every turn and hitting him just as frequently. He grinned as he began exchanging blows with Izuku and said, "My turn. He is more powerful than Wolfram." Izuku's thoughts turned back to the villain who had attacked the island as he took a right head-on. He genuinely thought Wolfram was stronger than the other, but this feeling was distinct. Since Wolfram only used metal pillars to attack, there was a certain amount of predictability to his strategy. Muscular, on the other hand, was considerably quicker and had greater physical strength than Wolfram. He was also unpredictable due to his speed, which enhanced the limitless power his muscle quirk offered. He then made an unsuccessful attempt at his new kickboxing technique, taking punches to land his own punches and charged kicks. Despite Izuku's damage accumulation from their trades, Muscular's quirk allowed him to withstand all of Izuku's attacks and return twice as much damage. A cross counter was the last trade, and Muscular remained smiling as the glove struck his face. His own punch was powerful enough to send Izuku flying into a crater in the wall of the cliff. Muscular shouted, "Here comes the finale," and punched Izuku with both hands, reiterating it with endless muscles. "Izuku, you must strike back. You will kill Kota if you don't." The boxer thought as he slipped to the side, pulled back his right arm, and released himself from the imprint. One for all, 100%, SMAAAASH. The villain's attack triggered a power struggle between Izuku and a wave of muscles as he screamed inside his head and charged up his right arm with all the strength he could muster. Every time Izuku snapped, 3 sets of muscle would reinforce his attack and add to the never-ending tide. The boxer screamed, "RRRAAAAAGGHH," in defiance of the villain, fighting Muscular with all of his strength in his right gloved fist. Even though its surface was starting to crack, Izuku screamed as he continued to push through, determined to survive despite the anger. As a crater developed beneath Izuku's feet, the villain screamed, "What's the deal with that, kid? That was weak. Weaker than anything you threw out earlier." Izuku tried to push forward as he felt himself being pushed back against the wall, using all of his arm strength to at least fend off the attack and live. His hope broke along with the gauntlet. The gauntlet and boxing glove fusion was overloaded during the battle by the overwhelming force being fought and the power it contained, shattering the gauntlet and turning it back into the regular tape. The wall behind Izuku was beginning to crumble as Muscular's attack continued to advance. As he continued to exert all of his strength in his arm, which was turning purple from the excess of One for All, the boxer was in excruciating pain, every fiber of his body screaming out in anguish and rage. Eventually, it broke too, but Izuku tried to push past Muscular despite the pain, not even realizing it. Kota questioned, Why are you doing this? This was aimed at the boxer, not the villain or anything else. I told you to leave me alone. I yelled at you, I used my quirk on you. So why are you still trying to save me? Because that's what heroes do. Izuku moaned, still struggling to push back, his right arm red and purple, blood dripping from it in his head. Muscular shouted, You're the best kid. I want to see you bleed. And pushed the boxer as hard as he could to make sure he died. Mom, all power, Kato-sensei, everyone, I apologize. I was unsuccessful, Izuku thought as the muscles gradually took control of him. He was on the verge of being crushed and out of his rage form when a thought struck him. Hold on, who's going to help Mom if I die? Who will carry on the legacy of All Might? His eyes widened as he thought of something else. Oh my god, what will Melissa and Momo think? He imagined how they would respond upon learning of his passing, and the image of their broken faces filled Izuku with fear until he began to experience something else. Muscular felt a splash of water strike the back of his head just as he was ready to complete the task and turn the boy into a red paste. When he turned around, Kota was still trembling and holding a water sphere. The child screamed, Stop it. Let him go, while Muscular gave him a crazy smile. He said, his eyes widening as he felt his attack gradually pushed back, Don't worry kid, I'll kill you next, just wait. A voice came from the hole where Izuku was. The thing exploded out of the hole and pushed back Muscular, screaming, as if I would fucking let you. The villain screamed, What the fuck was that? Are you actually getting stronger? Exclamation mark quote. As Izuku emerged from the hole, he was once again in rage form, but there were noticeable physical changes. His One for All lines were green, reflecting his anger, but they were more structured and resembled tribal markings rather than being haphazardly scattered over his body. Instead of glowing bright green, his eyes were glowing pure white, with fire-like trails of pure energy emanating from them. In addition, the boxer's hair was beginning to stand up a little. It was the ideal fusion of sixth sense and rage, allowing Izuku to let his anger out while still being able to reason. Izuku shifted his gaze to the villain in front of him as some of the rocks that had been loosened during the fight started to float upward around his form. Muscular shouted, It won't matter. Bleed, and rushed the boxer with his strongest once more, using an infinite supply of muscles to crush him again. Izuku drew back his left arm for a corkscrew punch while narrowing his eyes at the attack. Muscular was confused as the muscles appeared to all twist and fold in on the point of impact when his fist collided with the villain's attack. Then, as his punch managed to break up the mass of what was supposed to kill him, he felt himself being pushed back, Izuku's markings glowing a bright green with red highlights. Reinforcing his left fist, Muscular screamed, The fuck happened? And launched an attack. The boxer remained silent, easily sidestepping the blow before using his broken arm to throw a cross that caused Muscular to spin once before slamming a left hook into his liver. Izuku continued, snagging him with a firm grip. Izuku jumped from his grasp into an axe kick to the back of Muscular's head, causing him to bounce off the floor rather than remain there to recover, and then he knelt down. Izuku roared again and leapt with his right foot, his right arm by his side, and his left fist raised in another KO. Punch, but this time his left arm was pumped with 100%. Muscular was launched into the air after the blow struck his chin, shattering his jaw and sending his head back. Izuku yelled, I'm not finished, and leapt to his feet, launching himself into the air with enough force to leave a crater where he had been. He inhaled deeply, his shattered right fist clenched at his side. He screamed as he released the air through his nose and saw Muscular flying still up towards him. 1,000,000%. Asura smash. Izuku shot Muscular in the face with his right hand first, then another, and another, and another. Rapid-fire punches that were 3 times as fast and powerful as the boxer's previous throws hammered Muscular's entire body. As Kota watched the sky in the hopes that the villain who had tormented him for the previous 2 years would finally be vanquished, a torrent of wind erupted from this exchange of fast punches and fury. The last blow sent Muscular hurtling past the cliff and into a huge crater on the forest floor, and Izuku screamed again, his right fist glowing with a square of 9 different colored orbs on the back of his hand. Clutching his right arm, the boxer landed on his feet and reverted to his normal form. Then, with another roar of triumph and defiance, he turned to the sky. I've always believed that heroes are stupid and only use their abilities to fight. But I believe I've finally located my hero. In the same moment, unlike his portrayal in his battle against Izuku, Akuma was now being stared down by Samus and Little Mac. The enemy boxer had already transformed into his bloodlust form, with red hair and darkened skin complemented by enraged red eyes. And he had grown considerably. The man had grown twice in size from barely meeting the featherweight class's maximum weight limit. He was about the size and maybe the strength of a heavyweight boxer, according to Mac's estimation. With a dangerous clanging sound as his gloves smashed together, Akuma said, "My boss gave me some upgrades against the little shit who beat me. Now I want to know where he is to test them out. You're either gonna bring him to me, or I'll kill everyone here until they tell me where he is." Mac just gritted his teeth as Samus thought, "Damn it, my armor's still in the cabin." Akuma charged when Mac said, "Over my dead body." Samus fired 3 shots after he dashed in and threw a left straight that Mac ducked with a spin to the right. Mac sidestepped and slammed a jolt haymaker into Akuma's face after he blocked them and swung a right hook. Samus rushed in, slid under Akuma's legs, and kicked him hard in the back with her boots as he took a quick step back. Mac switched with Samus as the enemy boxer charged in with a hard right straight. The woman twisted her body as she kicked her legs up into Akuma's chest and ducked under the punch into a handstand. The man smiled as he leapt into the air. He lifted his plated left fist and instantly fell to the ground like a meteor. Since a tiny wave of energy was released from the impact that pushed them back anyhow, Samus Metroid appeared out of nowhere and tackled its owner out of the way. Akuma gritted his teeth as he said, "Meteor drop and a strength and size enhancement. 2 useful tools in my arsenal. Now, where is the boy?" His damage and the bloodlust from his quirk combined to make him even stronger. As Mac and Samus exchanged glances and nodded, he lifted his plated gloves and waved them both hospitably. Both charged in, swerving beneath powerful but deadly blows. Samus would provide support with gunfire and boot kicks, while Mac would grab his attention with quick blows and dodges. Little Mac was well known in the boxing community for his ridiculous strength despite his diminutive stature. This was a result of his training as well as his quirk, which was to use his adrenaline for strength. Doc Lewis's body was made entirely of strength because he pushed as much muscle into his small frame as he could. After seeing the battle against Izuku, he read up on Akuma and kept a close eye on him. Mac's right fist appeared to be on fire, but he decided to use it now. He kept his left arm and leg forward and stepped back with his right leg, holding that fist back. As Akuma started to charge, he charged up, saying, "Hog." The armor his quirk gave him prevented him from dying or even recoiling from the blows, even though he began to slam metal fists into Mac, each of which had more than enough power to kill a man. Then he ripped it, pushing both of them forward as the punch tore into Akuma's stomach and blew him into the tree line. Then Mac went back to his starting position and waited while Samus came back beside him. She said, "Is it time for Team Attack Alpha?" And he nodded. With the punch maximizing the power of his quirk, Akuma came out in a frenzied rage. Even though Akuma threw punch after punch, the two managed to dodge and jump past each one. In order to deter Akuma from attacking and divert his attention as she charged in, Samus began by grabbing his right fist with her Metroid. She pulled him in by releasing a rope of pure energy from her gun and wrapping it around him. Mac rushed past her to slam an adrenaline-fueled jolt haymaker into him, sending him crashing into the ground as she threw him forward and kicked him in the side. They both ran in motionless, with Samus jumping and kicking him twice from behind while spinning low with a kick to get him back up. The floating green membrane-like creature then caught hold of his back and electrocuted him as he flew away after she used her quirk once more. Mac, meanwhile, was standing with his legs wide apart, hunched over, his left fist near the floor, and his other hand raised to the sky. Mac swung his fist upwards just as Akuma was ready to land, causing it to spark as it swiftly slid against the ground and ignite Akuma as he shot skyward. After that, Mac helped her push herself into the air above him as Samus ran and leapt. Then, using her boots, she leapt out of the air, bouncing off of Akuma, who was sent plummeting downward once more, leaving a faint trail of afterimages. When Samus reached the ground, Mac grabbed her, and Akuma landed hard because his meteor quirk turns any fall higher than him into a meteor drop. Both of them started to move away when they heard a low rumbling coming from behind them. Something roared toward them, and Samus's quirk reactivated itself, sending the green creature flying behind her. Akuma suddenly materialized, his metal glove slamming into Samus and sending her tumbling into the forest, immediately killing the creature created from her quirk in a cloud of smoke. Immediately afterward, Mac spun around and used his adrenaline to thud a metal fist that was aimed at his face. "Sam!" he exclaimed, now looking angrily into the devil's eyes. Akuma screamed in desperation, "Die!" and smashed him with his other fist. Mac was angry and pushed him away with his adrenaline. Then, standing like a baseball pitcher ready to toss a ball, he clenched his right fist. Akuma dashed back in, and Mac delivered a straight punch, but this time it was directed at the liver. Akuma was rendered immobile by the blow, and as Mac persisted, he began to gasp in agony. He delivered 3 forceful blows to his face before delivering a second, wound-up blow directly at his face. After grabbing Akuma, he slammed his fists together into the back of his head and leapt after him. He pushed him back with a quick arm swing before landing, popping up Akuma one last time with a crouching punch before using the last of his adrenaline in a final move. He went low, his burning right leg bent toward his opponent, his left leg outstretched, a trail of fire shooting from his fist. At the moment, his right fist was slamming into Akuma's chin, while his left was by his side. With the actual power of the KO, after the punch landed, Mac used enough force to leap, knocking Akuma unconscious as he was flung into a tree. Then, coughing up blood, the retired boxer went to one knee. This was his quirk's real disadvantage. His quirk's super armor component was incredibly potent. As long as he had adrenaline in him, he could withstand any blow. That didn't mean it wouldn't hurt, though. Although Mac's body would never display the damage he would have sustained beyond minor cuts and bruises, he felt the full pain of the attacks he was subjected to. Then, he limped to the spot where he witnessed Samus being launched and discovered her sitting on the ground, leaning against another tree. Mac nodded when she asked, "Did you get him?" The pair supported one another by putting an arm around each other's shoulders as they made their way back to the class. "Good, I'll be fine, but you have to carry me to my armor. I think that metal glove made my legs numb." On their way to the camp, they encountered 2 more figures after moving for roughly 2 minutes. Samus said, "Izuku," as the boy clutched his purple arm with the assistance of another young boy. Izuku, still in pain from his battle with Muscular, stated, "Oh, one of my C classmates, Katsuki Bakugo, is being targeted by the League of Villains. We need to find him." The 4 hurried back after Samus said, "Come with us. We're gonna get back to the camp and find your classmate." When they arrived, they saw Mandalay battling a man dressed like a lizard in the disguise of Stain, while another individual in red caught sight of Izuku. The individual threw something in Izuku's direction, but the lizard man's knife caught it. The person exclaimed, "Spinner, what the hell was that?" The man now known as Spinner screamed, "Can it Magna, that kid's one of the few people Stain respects. Therefore he's off limits." Before Mandalay's moment of distraction led to him being knocked unconscious by a kick to the head. "Students, you have our permission to fight and defend yourselves with your quirks during this dire time." As Izuku spoke up once more, Mandalay used her peculiarity to spread this word to all of the students in the camp. As Mac and Samus hurried to their cabin, he yelled, "Katsuki Bakugo is their main target. I'm going to go look for them." After delivering the message, Mandalay exclaimed, "You're too injured to fight." Izuku's eyes were glistening green with vitality, just like they had in the ring. He ran off into the forest again and said, "Someone has to find him." After running a short distance, he collided with an injured shoji who was speaking with one arm. He declared, "Tokiyami is on a rampage." "What?" He said his quirk got stronger in the dark. It must have taken over him when the villains appeared. After a moment, Izuku had an idea and said, "We need to get him to light then." Izuku ran in the direction of the raging student as Shoji pointed behind him and said, "If we find Todoroki-kun or Kachan, then we can lead him to them to help." Where was he last? They discovered a monster when they got there. His body was being enveloped by dark shadow, which was tearing through everything it set its eyes on while roaring with rage. Tokiyami screamed from inside the beast, "Run, away." Izuku reacted angrily. As the raging dark shadow started to pursue them, Izuku yelled, "No. I'm going to save everyone. That includes you too." In an attempt to locate Bakugo and Todoroki, the two then started to guide the monster. After 10 minutes of running, they saw Aizawa and the two of them standing up to a man who was completely encased in a straitjacket, with only his mouth and elongating teeth exposed. The villain screamed, "Flesh, flesh, flesh, flesh," and pointed at Dark Shadow. His attempt to bite into the shadow was unsuccessful. Rather, Dark Shadow only became more irate and started fighting the villain, shattering the long T and knocking the man out. Looking at his wounds, Aizawa said, "Midoriya, what happened to you?" "Villain tried attacking me and Kota. I'll be fine when we're safe," Izuku replied. Finally vanquished by Tokiyami's raging quirk, they watched the villain take off and were ready to battle it. Aizawa exclaimed, "Todoroki, use your fire to weaken him." With a slight shrinkage caused by the fire, Todoroki activated his left side and raised an arm to crush Dark Shadow. Bakugo screamed, "If you wanna kill it dead, you do like this." As he flew in, blinding Dark Shadow with his explosions. He continued to flash until the quirk was gone, leaving Tokiyami exhausted and landing on the ground. Coughing, he said, "Thank you." When Momo finally showed up, Izuku exclaimed, "Kachan. We need to group around him, make sure the villains can't get him." An injured Momo turned to face the students and Aizawa and remarked, "There was a villain who could create gas during the test of courage, but 1B was able to take care of him. We need to circle around Bakugo-san, and make sure he's safe." Bakugo shouted, "I can take care of myself." Until Izuku interrupted. "I know you can, but you're their target. We have to be completely sure that you're safe." Izuku responded. Momo wrapped the explosive teenager in a tight circle and applied bandages and a medical brace to Izuku's injured arm. They were returning to the main camp. A brief shadow moved across the sky as they moved. When they felt each other's backs, their tightened formation caused them to become confused. When they turned around, Bakugo was gone, and then they heard a malicious cackle coming from somewhere. A villain wearing a mask and a magician theme said, "Stupid heroes, you let him slip away so easily. Now watch as for my next trick, I make him disappear." While clutching a tiny orb in his fingers. After putting it in his sleeve, he started running through the tree line. "Momo, can you make a slingshot large enough for one person?" asked Izuku. With a nod, she created the slingshot and fastened it to two nearby trees. "Shoji-san, please take it back." "Midoriya-san." As she and Suyu emerged, Uraraka remarked, "We just battled a crazy female villain. What's going on?" "Kachan belongs to the villains, Uraraka-san." He said, "I need you to do me a favor, and use your quirk on me." She obeyed, and he used Sixth Sense to activate Wrath, which was much easier than his rage form. He was hurled through the air like a cannonball, racing through the trees in hot pursuit of the villain as soon as he managed to establish a firm footing. Acquire. A villain with purple scars and stitches on his body threw an orb at Izuku, and just as he was about to catch it, it opened, forcing the boxer to jump over a wave of blue fire. "You refuse to accept him," Izuku shouted as he leapt closer to the antagonist. "You might have me, but are you aware of who your friend is?" Izuku's eyes widened and then lowered into a glare as he said, drawing out two orbs. "Did you take anyone else?" he shouted, but the villain dropped the orb when an energy sphere struck his hand, causing Ragdoll's unconscious form to fall to the ground. As Izuku charged, both of them intended to attack until he vanished, his hat falling to the ground, and they landed in confusion, only to turn around and see Samus in her orange and red armor, smoking an arm cannon pointing towards the villain. "Nobody else," said a voice from the side. "Goodbye, heroes." Izuku rushed through the air and slammed a fist into the man, forcing him to drop the orb. Samus, in a moment of quick planning, used her energy whip in her cannon to grab Izuku and throw him again at the villain, who was running towards a black portal. He yelled, "Oh no, you don't," Izuku said, reaching for the orb, which opened to reveal a blonde villain dressed like a schoolgirl with an odd neckpiece and a knife in her hand pointing above his neck. He was startled by the unexpected tackle from behind. "Hello sweetie, I'm Toga." As they began to depart through the portal, the magician stood, grabbing the now released Bakugo. "I think you bleeding every fight is cute, but cutting you will make you so much cuter," she said. "Kachan." Outside of his new form, Izuku shouted. When the others began to emerge, Toga leapt through the portal, and the boxer froze at what his old friend had to say next. "Deku, don't," Bakugo said, "it's not worth it," and vanished, leaving the portal as if it had never been there. Izuku Midoriya, on his knees and in a state of despair, could only raise his head to the sky and roar in agony at losing his childhood friend while keeping his eyes closed. We successfully defended ourselves today without suffering any casualties, but in that instant, we lost more than we will ever know. Izuku Midoriya was in a hospital bed the next time he opened his eyes. He slowly sat up and saw that his right arm was now healed, though not completely because of the bandages that were still on it. He looked down to see Momo sleeping after feeling a weight on his lap. Knowing that she was okay, he put a hand on her head and smiled. Then he looked sideways and saw the doctor who has been treating his mother. He said, "Hey there, kid. You had quite the battle, huh?" "Yeah," Izuku uttered, recalling all that had transpired prior to his fainting. The doctor said, "I have some bad news for you. When you fought, your body was forcing more adrenaline than it could handle through you to suppress the pain from your broken arm. I'm afraid if you shatter your arm to that extent again, then you're not going to be able to use that arm again. You can imagine what would happen to your boxing and hero careers if it happens again." "I know. That was the only option I had left. And I respect you for that decision. It was simply a warning," he responded. "How's mom?" "She's still comatose, and the poison's not spreading any further. We would do an operation on her, but it's so deep into her system already that even the best medical quirks wouldn't be able to save her from the aftermath of the operation. Your friends from the camp incident are also fine as well, before you ask." Izuku uttered, "Thank you, doctor." He departed the room as a group entered, saying, "You're welcome, Izuku." Todoroki asked, "Midoriya, are you all right?" While Mina, Kirishima, and Mineta were with him. "We were so worried when we saw you loaded onto the ambulance," said Mina. Mineta put a melon on the table beside his hospital bed and said, "I brought you a melon." He felt Momo stir from his lap, lifting her head drowsily for a moment before waking up as soon as he saw Izuku awake. "I'm fine now, guys. Thanks for the visit." "Izuku," she exclaimed as she collided with him and ensnared him in her arms. He put his arms around her and lowered his head into her raven hair, saying, "I was so worried when I saw your injuries." The group paused as he said, "I'm fine, Momo. I'm right here." When Kirishima said, "I'm glad you're alright, bro. Though there is still the issue of Baku, bro." Izuku's eyes instantly filled with regret. Mina thrashed him, saying, "Why do you have to bring that up? You don't know what that does to someone." Todoroki turned back to Izuku and continued, "He was right there when he was captured. Midoriya, Yaoyorozu was able to stick a tracker on one of the villains from the attack, and we think it will lead to Bakugo. Kirishima-san and I have a plan to save him. If you want to join, then meet us outside," Todoroki said, as he and Kirishima left. Mina and Mineta stayed a little while longer before going back to their houses. When Momo saw the sparkle in her boyfriend's eyes, she knew right away what he desired. She said, "You want to join them, don't you?" And Izuku turned to face his hands, focusing on the fresh scars from his battle with Muscular on his right arm. I was right there, Momo. He was just a few centimeters away from my reach, and I failed. I let him get captured. But Izuku, he then tipped his head in her direction, tears in his eyes as he remembered what had happened on Island. Wasn't my fault. I was literally at my strongest at that moment. Stronger than that. Even then, I couldn't save him. He sighed, a glint in his eyes surprising Momo despite his self-deprecating words. What kind of hero am I, who can barely save one person just to fail at saving another? I was only able to save you from Wolfram back in Island because he let you go to distract me. I barely saved Kota-kun during the villain attack because of a last-minute power boost that couldn't even save Kachan. However, despite all of that, I still want to be a hero. I still want to save Kachan. My dream is to save people, and if I couldn't do that, then what kind of hero would I be? Izuku replied. But Izuku, even with Todoroki-kun and Kirishima-kun, going to challenge the entire League of Villains as suicide. She responded, What would I do if you died? She exclaimed, breaking down in tears while speaking. Momo, I never said I was going to join them to fight the League, replied Izuku. He had a slight smile on his face when she looked up, perplexed. I said I wanted to save Kachan, not fight the League. I promise that I won't go looking for a fight, as long as you give me the okay. The girl pondered for a minute or so before deciding. She answered, I trust you. I'll allow it, on one condition. Izuku inquired, what is it? Izuku gestured for her to elaborate after she said, You allow me to watch over you. I was going to go to help them with the tracker, And yes, I know you promised to not go and fight the League, but this time I want to help. You were left alone to fend off that powerful villain while we were dealing with the rest, and after that you were only a hair away from saving him. I want to make sure that this time when we save him. And since I know you wouldn't accept me trying to prevent you from going, you need someone to keep you from breaking yourself again. She continued. He stood her up with him as he carefully got out of bed. He smiled at her and said, of course. As he and Momo left the hospital to meet Todoroki and Kirishima, he changed out of his hospital clothes and put on some new ones. Todoroki said, so, you've come to join us. Momo was about to reply when they heard Iida running toward Tama Izuku and Todoroki, in particular. Iida turned to face Izuku and Todoroki and yelled, what the hell are you all doing? Exclamation mark quote. At the four of them. He was about to reply, did you not learn from Hosu? Exclamation mark. You're going to get yourselves all killed. But Izuku stopped himself from attacking Iida by reflexively dodging and countering an incoming punch. Todoroki approached Iida, who was now stooped slightly, tears of frustration welling up in her eyes. None of you are willing to listen to my concerns into consideration over this. You're planning to go out and save Bakugo-san, but what then? What if you all end up severely injured? It would be Hosu all over again, and you would have not learned from my mistakes. Iida looked up in shock as he said, Iida-kun, we were never planning to engage the villains. Kirishima declared, we're doing this covert. Iida was somewhat satisfied when Momo added, I came along to make sure Izuku did not get injured again, and I will do so for all of us. I said this to Momo earlier, but I still feel guilty for his capture. Izuku replied, I have this feeling that I still need to save him, but we will not engage in combat. Izuku and Todoroki both smiled slightly when Iida said, then let me join you. Yaoyorozu-san will need help keeping you three honest to your words. Izuku said, thanks you, Iida-kun. The five of them turned to face Suyu as they heard, hold it right there, Ribbit. You guys aren't thinking straight. She replied. She inhaled deeply and said, I know we just came out of a deadly situation, but you all need to remain level-headed. They froze at that direct statement, but Izuku remained unwavering. Leave it to the professionals. If you guys keep thinking emotionally and go through with this, you'll be no better than villains. Asui-san, I'm sorry. We can't just sit around and wait, not when Kachan's life is still in danger. The fighter responded. Suyu gave them a final glance before turning around and heading back to the hospital to see how the rest of the class was doing. We could leave the professionals to handle this, but we have to do this. Todoroki stated. Some of the others thought the same. They said we were getting in over our heads. To which Izuku replied, I can understand why. The five of them then began to leave, following the blinking dot on Momo's phone, which was linked to the tracker. It's a very dangerous plan we've enacted. Either way, we've made our choice. Let's go. Eventually, they boarded a train and reached Yokohama City, which is in Kanagawa Prefecture. Momo stated, the League's hideout is nearby. She noticed a clothes store to her right. The others nodded and entered, grabbing new clothes and additional disguise-related items. We should buy some disguises so they wouldn't recognize. Izuku emerged wearing a hooded gray jacket underneath to conceal his hair and a thin, open black jacket with a pocket on the left shoulder. In order to conceal his obvious freckles, he was also wearing sunglasses and makeup that Momo had given him. He completed the ensemble with a pair of jeans and basic gray shoes. When he arrived, Kirishima was dressed like Kaminari, but with horns, and Todoroki and Iida were dressed as though they were bartenders. When he turned to face Momo, he froze in shock at her disguise, which somehow made her even more attractive than usual. Momo then made the decision to save the ensemble for later use after sensing his haze behind his sunglasses. Izuku tried to block out his gaze by asking, couldn't you have made us disguises instead of us having to buy them? She swiftly replied, I need to put money into this economy to keep it functioning. Her excited smile and tiny stomp only made it cuter. Todoroki and Izuku reasoned that she was only interested in shopping with them for clothing. Nezu, Aizawa, and Vlad were standing in front of the media when they abruptly noticed a live broadcast on a big screen in one of the surrounding buildings. Nezu and the other two on the screen bowed apologetically as one reporter said, we at UA would like to offer an apology to not just the Bakugo family, but to all of Japan. You send children to study and become the next defenders of society, yet we failed to protect a student from being captured. Rest assured that we at UA are working closely with the police and heroes to bring him back. How is UA going to protect its students after this event? She inquired. In the crowd that watched, people didn't seem to buy that, shouting for more than that for the future. We are going to improve our school's current security measures and increase campus security. Iida said, we should get going. The others nodded and proceeded to the league hideout, eventually arriving at what appeared to be a warehouse with vines and weeds growing up the front. Izuku remarked, that's probably a disguise for the hideout. Then they noticed two figures stumbling in the direction of the group. Come up with something quick, Izuku said. Hiroshima then grabbed Todoroki and pretended to laugh, the disguised son of Endeavor quickly catching on. Iida then pretended to be the one who told the joke, laughing with them. Meanwhile, Momo grabbed Izuku and slammed her lips against his, while both were in a mix of enjoying the kiss and watching out for the two drunks, who walked past them a moment later. Momo then pulled away to Izuku's disappointment, and the group then decided to move to the back of the base to avoid further detection. The group decided to check over a wall into the warehouse by having two of them stand on the shoulders of two others. Hiroshima was watching on Iida's shoulders, while Momo was supported by Izuku. Unlike Iida, Izuku was blind because of this, specifically since Momo's skirt was covering every inch of his field of vision. He then made the mistake of looking up, eyes bulging. Above him was a pair of black panties, and while they did cover up everything, it did nothing to ease him since he knew what was underneath. He screamed to himself, his face flushed, focus on the mission, Izuku. Until she told him to disappoint her. Momo pointed to the interior and said, it should be right there. Remember that if there is combat, I will not hesitate to pull us away from the scene. Iida replied. Izuku said, hold on a moment. He then leapt over the wall and secretly sped to the window using one for all. When he looked inside, he noticed tubes rows and rows of tubes lined the walls, each one filled with dark figures and liquid. Are those? Momo's eyes widened under her sunglasses as she asked, and when Izuku expressed what she was thinking, the others agreed. This establishment, the League maintains their nomus there. In the meantime, inside the actual hiding place. With his arms ready against the League, Bakugo declared, like hell I'm joining you fugly ducklings. Shigaraki had freed him and attempted to enlist him, but it had failed, and they were at a standstill. Tamura, aware that words alone would not persuade him, turned slightly to a black screen on a video chat. Shigaraki said, Sensei, I'll need your help with this A-rank challenge. The voice on the screen hummed in agreement. A sensible choice. The call ended, and Shigaraki turned to face the scowling Bakugo. I'll be on the way there soon, he said. You see, there is no hope. The villains then started to move slowly in our direction, only pausing when Bakugo started talking. You might as well let yourself join us. Come along. Become one of you losers. Bakugo declared, there is no way in hell that I am going to do that. It is a fact of life that a villain is a loser and a hero is a winner. I'm not going to join you fucks because I want to be an even bigger hero than All Might, the greatest winner of all. Shigaraki and the others started to move forward, but they were all stopped by a loud knock on the door. Has anyone placed an order for a large pizza? La pizza? The villains exchanged glances for a moment before Shigaraki moaned in response to a voice asking from behind the door. After remembering that he didn't place the order from there, he replied, I thought the guy would take at least 10 more minutes. Who is this in hell? The villain inquired, and as the door knob jiggled in response to the sound of someone unlocking the lock, the wall adjacent to the door abruptly collapsed. SMAAAAAASH. The door opened to reveal the pro-hero Edgeshot, who had a quirk that made it easy for him to manipulate and fold his body, which he used effectively in conjunction with his ninja motif. The number 1 hero yelled, his fist hitting Spinner's face as soon as the lizard villain was pushed away. He opened the door to reveal a sizable contingent of armored police officers and declared, pizza time. Not only do we have assistance with the police, but Endeavor and other high-ranking heroes are encircling the perimeter, he said. I advise you to turn yourself in. Then All Might turned to Bakugo, and his smile grew a little wider. Young Bakugo, you have my admiration for remaining courageous in this circumstance. But don't worry, I'm here, they said, before turning back to the bad guys. You were foolish to undervalue us, Shigaraki Tamura. You're surrounded now, give up. Hey, do you truly believe that we are outnumbered? Call the Nomus, Kurojiji, Shigaraki said. Shigaraki-san. To his surprise, the Mist Man said, I can't. Why not? He shouted. The Nomus are absent. There are none of them, he said. As other professionals stormed the warehouse, Mount Lady was spotted inside, or more precisely, on the roof, where she had caved in and was removing Nomu tanks. Izuku and his group watched in disbelief, shaking it off when they noticed helicopters flying toward the scene. All-powerful, I decline, Shigaraki declared, the League is only getting started. We will become more powerful and eradicate you in this vile society. Kurogiri, get out of here, warp. After that, Edge shot Kurogiri's metal body with a thin LIMD, knocking him out. You're going to taste defeat here. All Might screamed, but then a black liquid appeared out of nowhere, beginning to spawn Nomus to the surprise of everyone in the room. All Might tried to grab Bakugo, but the liquid grabbed him and vanished before he could save him. We require reinforcements, Kamui Woods said on his intercom, but got no response. He was momentarily perplexed before he looked outside and understood why the police and heroes were in their own mess, with Nomus fighting both inside and outside. Knowing that his master was present, Shigaraki smiled. A man in a black suit with a respirator helmet over his head stood calmly in the middle of the black liquid that covered the League members and sent them flying as the area between the warehouse and the bar, as well as the buildings themselves, suddenly exploded, creating a giant crater. The man remarked, All Might, you disappoint me. Tamura was at last starting to think independently. The 5 people who had come to save Bakugo had also frozen behind their cover, fear piercing their very souls as they felt the man's raw power. He was starting to become a leader of his own accord, one that I had no need to assist in leadership, until you showed up, the man said, unleashing a wave of killer intent that stunned everyone still at the scene. Izuku thought, All Might said that All for One was his nemesis, but I have to deal with that in the future. He was twice as afraid of the others knowing what would happen to him. All Might was encircled by 4 massive Nomus, who held him in place as All for One approached gradually. However, the hero managed to escape with an Oklahoma smash, and Bakugo and the League members appeared in a black puddle before All Might's adversary. All for One said, Tamura, you just need to try again. Katsuki Bakugo, Tamura, I'm sorry. You still have your Vanguard Action Squad. My successor. Keep trying until you get it right. After all, Katsuki Bakugo, you are still significant to me, so it is for your benefit. Izuku awoke momentarily from the paralysis of his fear and realized, I apologize for the trouble we have caused. He started to charge up, but he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Iida shaking his head. They don't know we're here, he thought, knowing that he couldn't just charge in against the villains, but he had to at least try. All for One. I'm going to take everything back from you, villain. All Might cried, emerging in the sky above the villain and launching himself down towards the ground with a fist raised, only to be pushed away by the man who blocked it. He shouted. Does that imply that you will attempt to murder me again? All for One replied, forcing Kurogiri's quirk to activate and sending Bakugo and the League through a portal. Following another round of attacks, All Might and All for One were at a standstill. The villain said, You've gotten weaker, All Might. The hero answered, as have you, old man. I will save young Bakugo. And I'm not going to repeat what I did 5 years ago. I will definitely arrest you and your League of Villains this time. After that, All Might charged not at All for One, but at Katsuki Bakugo, who was defending the League from the other side, but he was ejected before he could reach him because of a powerful energy burst. In the back of the wall, as long as Kachan is present, All Might won't be able to fully commit. Izuku gathered their attention and said, if we can get above them, only Kachan will be able to reach us. I might have an idea on how to rescue Kachan without fighting. But it must be someone he spends enough time with to be trusted. I do tend to hang around Bakugo-kun, but that is mostly to contain his behavior with the help of Uraraka-san. He continued. Izuku stated, then it has to be Kirishima-san. Hold on, why me? Kirishima inquired. Remember how you accompanied him to the I-Island Expo? The closest thing he has to a friend is you. You are necessary to us. Izuku said, please, and the teenager with the red hair nodded. It's a gamble, but with All Might out Tere, this is our best chance. Iida replied. He said, all right, let's do this. Todoroki-kun. I want you to create a big ice ramp when I give you the signal. Iida-kun. Get hold of Kirishima-kun so we can reach Kachan. Todoroki nodded, getting ready for his ice side. After they had saved Bakugo, Momo made a communicator for Izuku for verification. Izuku grabbed one side of Kirishima and charged up 15%, while Iida charged up his Recipro Burst. Kirishima then activated hardening to protect them, and the three of them began to move, flying through the air like a rocket, high above the crater and into All for One's line of sight. He was about to use a combination of rocket hand, laser palm, and tracking projectiles to remove them, but All Might shielded him with a fist to the helmet. Bakugo also took notice, smiling at the shout he heard. "Go bro," Kirishima yelled, as Bakugo was about to get grabbed by Shigaraki. He blasted away the hand villain, and used his explosion quirk to rocket his way towards them, grabbing Kirishima's hand with a grin and the words, "Shitty hair." Magna launched compress in their direction, but before he could reach them, a giant hand swatted him back to the ground, thanks to an injured Mount Lady. "Damn it," All for One said. "Children, get him out of here. We can do this," she screamed at them before collapsing and fainting again. "Avoid launching me, get me started," twice shouted as Magna and Spinner got ready to throw him next, but Gran Torino's appearance caused quick kicks to affect all three. Fuck it. The four-person flying group managed to land safely, with Momo and Todoroki joining them a short while later to observe the battle. "That kid is beginning to act more and more like him," the elderly hero said, getting ready to confront Shigaraki and Toga. "Tamura Shigaraki, you are my heir." Despite Tamura's indignant protests, All for One fiercely activated Kurogiri's quirk and twisted the league away, saying, "Finish the battle which I have started." Shortly after, All Might and All for One stood apart on opposite ends of the flaming rubble of buildings, All Might's signature smile only now visible on the outside, concealing the raw anger inside him. All Might then charged at the villain, dust and dirt blowing away as he did so. His punch was blocked, as was his next attempt at a kick, and All Might tried to unleash a flurry of punches, but All for One countered with a flurry of his own punches that negated them all. All Might then leapt back, punching the air to send a wave of wind at the villain, who stayed put by using iron legs. Gran Torino was sent in front of All Might by All for One using a transmission quirk as All Might charged again, forcing All Might to halt his attack to avoid hitting his teacher. "All Might, you have no idea how much I despise you. You've destroyed the only people I could rely on, and you've nearly deprived me of my successor as well. You've risen to the top of society, and I've only sunk further." All Might, with quick thinking, grabbed Gran Torino and tossed him aside, using a Detroit Smash to cancel out the incoming blast. "This cannot stand any longer." All for One then charged a purple orb in one of his hands, determined to blow both of them away. That boy, All for One saw a green-haired child with something other than fear in his eyes. "I can see it in his eyes. You're fire," he said, vocalizing his thoughts as he kept dodging and blocking incoming attacks. "He is your heir. Really fascinating. It appears that Tamura will face a formidable opponent in the future." He then pushed All Might away as a realization dawned on him. With a smile on his face, All for One remarked, "It seems I've created a large amount of destruction. I wonder how many civilians I have to put in your way to keep you from fighting with your full power?" he asked. All Might shouted, "Don't you dare," and hurried back toward the villain. Attempting to block All Might's incoming left uppercut with a combination of 2 speed quirks and 1 reflex quirk, but it was a last-minute feint, a tactic learned from Kato and Izuku. The man skidded a short distance back as it turned into a hard right cross that destroyed his mask. The news cameras showed that the man's face was hardly a face at all when he turned it back to All Might. "I shall end your reign of terror and violence once and for all," he said. Above his mouth, everything was just a jumble of melted skin with no eyes or nose. Gran Torino exclaimed, "All Might," as the number 1 hero's face started to lose air, with the left half already deflated. All for One abruptly blocked and pushed back an enraged All Might, saying, "All bark and no bite. Such words remind me of your weakling of a predecessor, Nana Shimura." As he ran in for another punch that was deflected and blocked, he yelled, "You have no right to say her name," and threw another. He laughed as he ducked and retreated, saying, "She spoke dearly of her ideals and motivation, yet she was too weak to back them up with strength." He deliberately raised the volume of his voice so that All Might could hear everything he said. All Might had reached his breaking point and was using the last of his one-for-all energy to vanquish the villain in front of him. Such uselessness reflected her death, shameful and embarrassing for a hero. All for One smiled and shot a laser blast past him, saying, "One for all. I can sense it in you. It's nothing but embers, isn't it? That makes my job easier. I will crush your mind before destroying the faith of your followers, and then kill you in the most gruesome of ways for taking away what I hold closest to me." After a moment of confusion, All Might recognized that a woman was buried beneath debris in the laser's path. The hero used his body to block the blast in a quick burst of speed, wasting the rest of his time and forcing him to change back to his normal form while the public was still unaware of it because of the steam and dust. However, the world froze when it finally cleared, revealing All Might's true form. They recognized the Slender Man for what he really was, and All for One enjoyed the glances at his adversary. Knowing that the world now knew All Might's greatest secret, Izuku thought dreadfully, They know. He sneered, but All Might's resolute blue eyes were still alive as he clenched his right fist. Finally, you're no longer wearing that disgusting power. And now the world can see you for what you truly are, All Might, a weak liar posing for the people as a hero, yet now you barely possess the strength to hide such a pitiful body from the world. Though my body may be weak and fading, though I may be losing power, I shall not falter as the symbol of peace. I do not care that the world has been exposed to my rotting body. As long as this broken husk of a man can still save people, I am still the symbol of peace. He screamed, and there is nothing you can do to take even a fragment of that away from me. His smile widened as he suddenly thought, It seems that I may have to break your spirit now before I can kill you the way I desire. Before I kill you, I have something I would like for you to hear. The villain smiled and asked, Do you know that Tamura Shigaraki is your former master's grandchild? Wah, yes, I recall picking him up when nobody else would. How does it feel, All Might? All this time, I've been thinking about how much that fact would disturb you. I created the perfect opportunity for you two to meet, and you mercilessly beat him into submission, didn't you? Without knowing a thing, all the while shining that triumphant smile of yours. You're lying, All Might uttered, his smile fading and his anger mounting as the villain went on. It's the truth. You understand, don't you? This is the kind of thing I would do, he replied. The villain then pushed up his cheeks in a phony smile, mocking his former master's remarks, saying, That's weird, All Might. The man's mask prevented him from showing the fake smile, but the effect was the same. What happened to that smile of yours? He inquired. From behind him, the trapped civilian cried out, Help me, please. Fear gripped every sense as the withered symbol faced the most formidable villain in the world. As All Might raised his arms, determined to keep the civilian safe until the very end, another beam flew in their direction. Gran Torino screamed, That smile, it belongs to the people who he supports. And nullified the beam by kicking a big rock in its path. Their smiling faces are what allows the symbol of peace to do his duty. Tiger released the woman All Might was defending beneath the fallen structure, an injured mount lady holding it up long enough for her to escape before dropping it and shrinking back to her normal size, and said, Don't worry about civilians, All Might. We're still here to help. Endeavor screamed, I can't believe this has been what prevented me from becoming number one. Even then, defeat him, All Might. The others shouted in support of All Might as they watched and helped the heroes. Enough sentiments. It's time we finished this. With a final burst of energy, All for One drove the heroes out of the crater, leaving All Might and himself alone. All of a sudden, his right arm started to grow, with muscle and metal wriggling in between layers of flesh, until it was at least as big as the rest of his body. The now floating villain, who frowned behind the remains of his mask, was surrounded by a red aura of power. Spring-like limbs, 4 kinetic boosters, 3 strength enhancers. He charged at All Might, who deflected the blow with a half-inflated body, shielded from the oncoming assault by his right arm, the only muscled limb. I will slay you with the ultimate quirk combination, he exclaimed. All for One pushed back against the feeble punch, saying, to resist in such a pathetic attempt at life. I can't pass away just yet. All Might pondered as the enormous fist approached him once more. As he charged into All for One's guard, he barely avoided it, the fist a centimeter from contact. I must be present to instruct him. I am not allowed to die until he takes my place as the next symbol. I miscalculated, All Might. All Might's left arm was now powered by muscle when he was abruptly struck by a left. Although Nana had taught him the cross punch during his early basic training, he had surreptitiously learned the move by watching Kato and Izuku train. One for all. Compared to years ago, there are now only embers remaining, but that one was weak, shouted the villain. That's because my back wasn't in that one. The hero exclaimed, raising his right arm, which was now purple, to retract. As he prepared his last move, his right arm, legs, and chest swelled into his muscular form. All for One had to praise the quirk he indirectly created because, even as embers, it remained as powerful as when his brother first held it all those years ago. Just as it was then, One for All refuses to weaken in the face of overwhelming odds. I need the strength from the 7 wielders in front of me to finish this. His subsequent remarks gave hope to the world, not just to Japan, as All Might closed in. The hero continued to perform his duty despite an explosion behind him from a mist counter All for One fired with his other inflated arm. I shall finish what my successors have given their lives to accomplish. All Might's fist was now just inches from All for One, and as it approached the villain, a brilliant light was leaking from his body. All Might pushed himself to the limit, pushing every last drop of One for All that remained in him to the limit. The earth trembled as the punch struck, carrying the villain with it. Farewell, All for One. United States of, taking on the full force of 8 generations of One for All in a second crater, the attack carried All for One into the floor. With a single word that could be heard throughout the planet, wind, debris, and light all burst into a final explosion. Smash! The impact created a tornado that pushed away anyone who was too close to the battleground and even shot so high that the news helicopters had to fly away or risk being carried away by the wind. When it finally cleared and everything was over, Japan's hope was visible at the bottom of the new crater. All Might was seen at the bottom of the crater, his eyes shadowed out as he fully returned to his deflated form, the embers of One for All gone from him. And farewell to you, One for All. With All for One lying at his feet, unconscious, he triumphantly raised his injured right arm. Then he turned to one of the numerous cameras that were recording him, and the world fell silent. At his last words as the symbol of peace, Izuku Midoriya's eyes started to well up with tears, but not in the same way as the rest of the world. As he said his last words as the symbol of peace, All Might kept the same glare from against All for One while pointing his previously raised hand in the direction of the camera. You're next. The final battle between All Might and his arch-nemesis seemed to mark the end of All Might's reign. He was no longer able to be a hero because One for All had completely vanished from his body. Society changed after he announced his retirement in a final press conference. The UA retained its residence halls, but Nezu boosted security by employing the professional hero Hound Dog to patrol the school's grounds. Now that every student was in the common room, Mina remarked, "I can't believe that All Might had to retire." The remainder of the class had made the decision to remain in the dorms and take some time to relax, while Bakugo had gone to sleep in order to allow the events of the previous few days to pass from his thoughts. Right now, Izuku was focusing on his hands and recalling what his doctor had said about overstressing his arms and the negative effects of doing so. They were all sitting in the lounge when Momo said to the girl who was seated next to him, "Izuku. What's wrong?" Izuku flexed his right hand's fingers and remarked, "I'm just worried about what the doctor said about my arm." After hugging him and resting her head on his right shoulder, Momo rubbed her thumb over the scars he had acquired since enrolling in UA. "I don't want to push myself too far and ruin both of my dreams, but at the same time I can't show less than everything I've got." "Izuku, I'm sure that you'll be alright," she replied. She recalled his wrath form from the forest attack, which allowed him to overcome blind rage while maintaining the benefit of using his quirk at higher levels without injuring himself. "I have faith that you'll be able to figure out a way to power through your weaknesses. It hasn't stopped you before." When they all abruptly stopped at the sound of the elevator arriving, Izuku remarked, "I hope so too." A familiar head with long blonde hair was running towards them as they all turned to face the door. Izuku and Momo joyfully yelled, "Melissa!" The other members of the I-Island group grinned as she hurried in and jumped into their arms. Izuku inquired, "What brings you here?" As she separated from the other two, she said, "I saw the news about Bakugo-san's kidnapping and Uncle Might's fight. What happened to you guys? I'll tell you later. But first, wanna eat? How long was the flight here anyways?" "I ate on the plane. It was only about 2 hours, since the island was passing by," she responded. Izuku and Momo led her to their shared room, Izuku shutting the door behind them, and Momo said, "Hey, can we go somewhere public? Preferably with Yaoyorozu as well. It's something important." Melissa rushed back into Izuku's arms as soon as the door closed, briefly kissing him before pressing her head against his chest. She trembled as she said, "I was so scared." As Izuku put one arm around her lower back, she said, "I knew you were up against a tough opponent when I saw one of my gauntlets were destroyed. After the news showed the League attack, I thought the worst. What happened to you all out there?" His other lay on her head, softly massaging her hair. They told her everything for the next half hour. To the surprise of Momo and Melissa, who remembered nearly fighting Inomu, Izuku recounted his battle with Muscular. Fortunately, Pixie Bob had arrived to battle it with her earthly creations, which allowed her to assist 1B in fending off Mustard and his gas quirk. She also provided Tetsu and Itsuka with gas masks. The blonde was then informed by Izuku and Momo of their mission to save Bakugo, which Melissa took offense at because of Izuku's rash attempt to save him in spite of his wounds. "You guys have been through so much the last time I saw you," she replied. Momo answered, "Yeah, it was quite something." After removing a black box, Melissa stated, "I do however save some good news." This was an additional wristband for his previously destroyed right gauntlet. "Thank you, Melissa." To his surprise, she closed the box. With blue eyes gazing into green, she said, "Promise me." "What?" inquired Izuku. Izuku kissed her forehead in response to her statement, "Promise me that if I give you this, you'll be much more careful. Your arm is already in danger of being permanently out of commission. Please don't let it come to that." She put the other gauntlet on his wrist, and he turned it on to look at it. "I promise, Melissa." He placed it next to the other gauntlet wristband in the box and said, "It's perfect." She caught Momo's and Izuku's attention by saying, "Oh, by the way. To make sure you keep your promise, I'm staying here for a while. The council thought it would do me some good to spend some time away from the island after the fiasco we went through at the expo, and I suggested Japan since you're here." "That's wonderful, Melissa. Though, where are you staying?" Momo responded. "I talked with Principal Nezu. He said that I can live here for the time being, and help out in UA's support department if I wanted to keep myself busy. As for where I'm living specifically, I was hoping to share Izuku's room," she said with a blush on her face. She was perplexed when he said, "Actually, Momo and I use my room for storage." Momo finished her sentence with a playful smile, making Melissa blush. "Izuku lives in this room with me. There's enough space in there still for you to sleep comfortably, unless you wanted to sleep next to our dear Izuku," Momo asked. Izuku and Momo grinned as she whispered, why, yes." Momo said, "That's fine with us." However, they heard a knock at the door before they said, "I want to make sure Izuku and I get enough rest because we have some special training tomorrow." When Momo opened it, Tsuyu was inside. As the two turned to face Melissa, she said, "Can you two meet me outside? It's important, Hiro." After the two nodded and followed the frog girl out of the dorms, Melissa said, "I'll be fine guys. Go on ahead." Iida, Hiroshima, and Todoroki, the other three who helped save Bakugo, were standing there. They heard the frog girl sniffle just as they were about to inquire as to why they had been called out there. She sobbed as she said, "Everyone. I'm sorry. It was just, I was so scared. When I was younger, I was always picked on because my quirk gives me some physical traits of a frog. You guys were the first ones to treat me equally despite my frog quirk, and when I heard you were going out to a place where you could very easily die, I couldn't lose you all. So, can you please forgive me?" The group then tied her up in a hug, which caused her to start crying. Hiroshima responded, "It's okay, Tsuyu-san. We're still here, aren't we?" Momo remarked, "Your fears were valid, Tsuyu-chan. And quite frankly, your concern back then was comforting, to say the least. Yeah, it just shows how much you care for our safety," Izuku continued. The group went back to the dorms after Tsuyu said, "Everyone, thank you." The following day, Melissa, who was watching, and Class 1A were standing in front of Smentos, Midnight, Ectoplasm, Aizawa, and the now retired All Might in Gym Gamma. "Super moves are something we were supposed to teach you all at the training camp, but after the attack we decided that we should teach them to you as quickly as possible to make up for lost time," Aizawa responded. "They're bold, flashy, powerful. Super moves allow you to control the flow of battle and to guarantee the upper hand," said Midnight. The class then turned to their resident boxer, who was just standing there clumsily, and said, "For example, Midoriya Izuku." Smentos then put his hands on the training area's concrete, raising pillars of various sizes, each of which gained an ectoplasm clone. He has quite a few super moves that he uses in the way I previously mentioned in both his matches and his hero training so far. As students gradually began moving to join their respective clones, the ectoplasms declared, "Today you will be making super moves of your own." When they got going, Kato showed up and noticed that Izuku was motionless. As he met the boxer, Toshinori joined him and he asked, "Kid, you alright?" Izuku responded, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine." The truth was that he was torn. To improve his fighting technique, He had been training in kickboxing, but thus far, it had only given him more chances to pretend. This was all well and good, but he was afraid of being forced to retire early if he overworked his arms. What if I stay the same and ruin both of my careers by breaking my arm? He pondered. Kato approached him and said, "Kid, I can see that you're in a bit of a pinch. All I can say is that you have what it takes to figure it out." And All Might added, "I concur. You're becoming your own hero, yet I feel as though you're holding yourself back somehow." Restraining myself. Others were already able to take action as he was thinking this. While Tokiyami infused his body with dark shadow as a kind of armor, Mina used her breakdance skills to spin and spray diluted acid to create a field where she could fight. His eyes grew wide as he watched Iida dash in brandishing a fresh recipro burst. Izuku was alone in the dorm's gym after that training day, squatting with a kettlebell near his chest. 49:50. He set the weight down and took a quick break from his leg workout to sip from a water bottle. Then a sudden thought came to him, and he turned to his notebook and jotted it down. The boy turned to face her as she said, "Hello Izuku." His heart briefly stopped when he saw her wearing a pink sports bra, tight shorts, and a ponytail. He had to shake himself to get rid of the obscene thoughts. He approached her and said, "Melissa, I was just about to look for you, actually. Do you think you can extend the gauntlets to just over my forearms? I need to support my ligaments more, and since you gave me these I was hoping you could give me a hand." She exclaimed, "Of course," as he gave her the wristbands. "It should be ready by tonight." "Wait, really?" inquired Izuku. "Extending them actually isn't that hard. I just need to make sure the ligament support works. Besides, it's for your safety after all. I just want to make sure it functions properly," she clarified. She blushed as he gave her a quick peck on the lips and said, "Thanks Melissa. You're the best." After she nodded, he grinned and said, "I was going to go head to the support department after this, but do you want to work out with me first?" "All right then. Just know that I will push you." "Of course," was her reply. After that, he put the kettlebell away in return for 4 weights, giving her 2 as they started doing lunges and curling the weights when they stood back up. Eventually, Izuku stepped through the support department doors while a huge explosion sprayed him with soot. Wiping his eyes, he anticipated seeing the hero power loader and the silhouette of Mei Hatsume from the sports festival. Wiping the soot from his face, the hero screamed, "Damn it Mei, what the hell was that?" Mei said, "The sound of progress, my teacher." Then she turned to see Izuku standing suddenly beside him. "Hey, it's the boxer guy from 1A. How can I help?" she inquired. "I need some minor adjustments to your costume," she said. "Ooh, I have some things I think would go perfectly with you," and then sped off, coming back with a few things. As she revealed a yellow metal gauntlet with spiked knuckles and a horn shoulder pad, she exclaimed, "Look at this. A giant arm-sized gauntlet that you can store kinetic energy in to release a powerful blast." According to Izuku, "Don't need it. Too bulky for my style," she said. "Then what about this?" As she displayed a massive fist full of brass instruments. The knuckles resembled the keys to a piece of brass. "This baby can easily form around the arm, releasing steam pressure for a massive punch. It also can open up to hold a person inside." As she tossed it aside, Izuku questioned, "Where would I even fit that?" "But no, that's not what I'm here for." Mei put her hands on her hips and said, "Then what are you here for?" "I just need you to add reinforcement to my costume's shoes, and some leg guards beneath the pants." Mei pouted, "Fine, I'll have it ready for tomorrow." "Is that it?" Izuku stated, "Yeah, thanks," and handed her the case containing his costume. He opened his notebook as he left. Now, how did Iida do it? The following day, the students were either creating or practicing the super moves they had learned back in Gym Gamma. A pair of odd devices were attached to Momo's forearms. She wore red laceless boxing shoes in place of her red heels and open-fingered boxing gloves on her hands. Her hands were equipped with tiny jets to force her arms back into a cocked back position. She shouted, "Ectoplasm Sensei, I'm ready." As he hurried her, before the jets on her arms roared to life, she dodged a roundhouse kick and delivered 2 quick jabs and a baseball bat swing. As she shouted out the name of her super move, the jets roared to life as she pushed herself forward into Ectoplasm's guard with springs from her feet. 1,000 fists, she exclaimed, recalling Izuku's propensity for fast-paced punching. She designed the jets on her arms with this in mind, so that she would only need to punch forward to land a blow. After helping Tokiyami come up with a better name for his super move, Midnight appeared beside the girl, and the final punch sent the clone flying back. "Such an unexpected move from you, Yaoyorozu. I'm honestly impressed," said Midnight. As she charged the clone again, the girl nodded and substituted a mace for her jets, saying, "Throw in a battle cry and it'll be even more intimidating." At the moment, Bakugo was standing in front of a block of concrete that was 7 meters thick and smiling. Bakugo put his hand in front of the block and screamed, "Focus my explosions onto one point in my palm, and release." AP shot. His blast easily tore through the block, causing the building to tremble and a boulder to rock enough to tumble off its stand and smash into a trio. Melissa had approached Toshinori and Aizawa during the training session to have a better look at the students' development. Turning to face Melissa, Toshinori remarked, "They're really improving. Don't you agree?" "Yeah, the ones I knew from my island seem so much stronger than they were back then," she replied. "They better. This year, 1A has all the focus on them. Improvement is necessary not just for their careers, but for them to mature," Aizawa stated. A voice shouted, "Watch out," and the three turned to see a boulder falling in their direction. A green streak of light shot past them and abruptly shot into the air before they could react. Izuku's costume adjustments were exposed, and he screamed, "Manchester!" Smash, as an axe kick shattered the rock. His full gauntlets hung just over his elbows and beneath his rolled-up sleeves. Over his shoes were black iron soles, and beneath the trousers were black knee pads that ran up to his thighs and down to his feet. Even though he hadn't worn the costume yet, the bandana was replaced with a metal respirator that covered his mouth and nose. It had the same function as the bandana but was a little better. Shoot style. One for all. Izuku's respirator shone as he landed in a crouch. He spent the majority of the night completely revamping his style, which led to this new look. His foundation was the kickboxing stance, which he complemented with his standard boxing technique. He also took some advice from Iida on how to use a kick-based style to combine both of his fighting techniques. The man nodded, and Izuku smiled. "Ectoplasm Sensei, I have new super moves I want to try out. Will you allow me to test them out on you?" Rushing the clone, he dodged a sharp blow to sweep his leg before backflipping over him and stomping him in the back, which caused him to bounce back up. Izuku leapt above the clone, swinging his leg downward in an arc, his eyes glowing. Street. Lewis smash. He kicked the clone into one of the concrete platforms with a 15% vertical roundhouse kick to the side. The boxer clenched his fists and braced himself as another clone charged at him. The boxer was in front of the clone when the teachers and students watching saw a green flash of lightning and a dust storm. He countered a kick with a liver blow, ducked under a right cross, and blocked a left hook. Then he sent the clone hurtling into the air with an uppercut to the chin. Izuku leapt up to him, spinning and pushing him up even higher with his final 3 kicks to the chest. The boxer then let out steam from his mouth and briefly flared his wrath form, forming a makeshift double jump with 20% in his legs. As a result, he shot through the air and hit the ceiling. Before lifting his right leg, he kicked off the roof and shot downward, spinning vertically. He screamed the name of his next new move as he brought it down. He roared, "Shinra Smash," and the clone jumped off the floor as his foot slammed down on her. Izuku kicked up more as he ran in the direction of the falling clone and landed in a cloud of dust. He flipped forward, exposing his legs, his eyes and skin glimmering with electricity. After saying, "And now the finale. Muda 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 muda." He kicked repeatedly, just like he did when he struck with his fists. Before gravity took over and the boy fell to the ground in a crouch, kicks hit his face and torso with lightning speed. He flipped backwards and kicked the clone one last time upward, sending it crashing into the gym's roof, its legs dangling there for a second before vanishing. Kaminari said, "Dude, what the fuck happened to you since yesterday?" Iida shouted, "Kaminari-kun, language. I created a few new special moves yesterday while practicing my new style. I'm trying to not rely on my new wrath form like I did with Rage, and combining a kick-based style with my boxing created an all-around style for hero work." Izuku elaborated. Last night, while practicing shoot style, he also learned new things about his wrath form. All he had to do to summon power from his former Rage form was feel angry. But wrath form needed something more. Izuku needed to be both furious and energized by the rush of adrenaline that comes from a life or death situation, like his battle with Muscular, in order to activate it. Izuku could not have activated it if it weren't for those particular circumstances. Izuku laughed when Kaminari remarked, I think you should add something to that last combo you did. Maybe add some fire. Midnight remarked, simply amazing, Midoriya-kun. According to Aizawa, you're all progressing at a rational rate. The students nodded and went back to their training. Now that you have your moves, we will refine them for the next week until the license exams begin. After a week, Class 1A was prepared for the provisional license exams after honing their new special moves for a week. Now that the students were in front of Takoba National Stadium, Melissa had also arrived to watch alongside All Might and Aizawa. They heard, "Yo, Eraser. Let's get married," and turned to see a heroine with turquoise hair surrounded by her own students. He answered, "Stop playing around, Joke. Isn't she Ms. Joke, the hero who takes down villains with her laughing quirk?" Izuku inquired. "Yep, Emi Fukukado. She's a colleague of mine." Emi began to laugh, saying, "Your colleague? Better start paying tuition. And you're back to being difficult to talk to." She recovered from her outburst of laughter and said, anyways, I'm the homeroom teacher for Class 2-2, Ketsubutsu Academy." Grinning, one of her students approached Izuku and Momo. "You've all been through a lot in the past few months, huh? My name is Shindo. It's nice to meet you," he said. Momo turned to face Izuku, who was observing him like a ring opponent. With caution, he said, "Nice to meet you." The boy laughed and went on to Bakugo. He said, "Get the hell away from me." Kirishima remarked, "Don't be rude, bro." As Shindo walked away, Izuku remarked, "He doesn't seem honest." She didn't know why he was so cautious, but she did say, "He is competition after all." A loud voice shouted, "Don't forget about us." And two teachers and students turned to face a student wearing a beret. An additional student wearing a beret remarked, "Inasa, please stop disturbing the other students." The now named Inasa said, "Sorry. Best of luck," and went back to his class. Bakugo stated, "Those extras are from Shiketsu High. And that student, Inasa Yoarashi. He's a powerful student who received top score in the recommended students exams. He turned down his application to UA," explained Aizawa. "Wait, why?" inquired Izuku. "I'm not sure. However, I do know that despite his awkwardness, his power and talent is something to not underestimate." "Be careful," he replied. Emi yelled at her students, "Go get changed, students," and dismissed them. With 1A departing, Aizawa remarked, "You guys should go and do the same." "Hey, you didn't tell them about that, did you?" Emi responded. Aizawa said, "No, as upcoming heroes with so much spotlight on them, they need to learn this lesson on their own." Inside, "Hello students. My name is Mara of the Yon Hero Public Safety Commission. I'll be the one watching over your Yon exam. Only 100 of you all will be able to participate in the actual exams, and this event will determine which of you will be in that 100. The pupils then became nervous and Izuku took Momo's palm. "For the first event, it will be an elimination," said Mara. "You will be given 6 balls and instructed to place 3 targets on your body that are not your armpits or beat. You will be immediately eliminated if all 3 are struck, and the last person to hit will receive a point. To advance to the next event, you must eliminate at least 2 opponents. We will give you the targets and the balls 1 minute after the preliminary round starts." Abruptly, the walls started to shift, and the ground trembled as well, exposing a spacious open space. "The balls and targets will now be handed to you." Izuku's eyes hardened as Mara explained, "As soon as the alarm rings, the game begins, so make sure you have a strategy in place over the next minute." Izuku turned to his peers and said, "Guys, we should work together." "But we'll be pursued by everyone," Mineta shouted. "Exactly." He slammed them together, a resolute expression on his face as he faced his class, and the strands of glowing blue that represented the full gauntlets wrapped over his boxing tape, forming his glove gauntlet combination. "They know how we fight, and what our quirks are," he said. "That is not a luxury we enjoy. We can all pass the preliminary exams if we cooperate," Izuku clarified. As Momo hurriedly made shields for her classmates, she said, "I'm with you, Izuku." Next to him, Bakugo and Todoroki said, "Sorry, but count us out, bro. I would be able to use my quirk much more effectively if I'm not huddled with everyone," Kirishima said. Bakugo snarled and turned to leave, saying, "I'm kicking their asses without your help, shitty Deku." Kirishima sprinted after him. Todoroki left by himself, saying, Sorry, Midoriya, but I agree with Kirishima-san. Grouping up with all of you would only limit me. Izuku put the final target over his heart on top of his jacket and said, no worries. Let's just hope you guys make it to the next round. Anyone else? Was not answered. Alright then. On my mark. Everyone who had been looking at other schools and students turned to face them when the alarm went off. Of all the things that change every year regarding these exams, one thing remains the same. Do you know what it is? Emi asked, turning to Aizawa. Melissa turned to 1A, specifically Izuku, with a worried expression on her face and said, yeah. I have to deal with it every year, remember? The crushing of UA. Please, Momo-chan, Izuku, be okay. As the adversaries descended, she thought. Izuku covered his mouth and nose with his respirator and prepared his fists against the never-ending orange wave that stood in his way of becoming a hero. Heroes have to overcome impossible odds all the time. This is no different. Now then, let's go, he said. Izuku and his classmates started working. Mina, acid throw the right. Momo, we need shields to the left. I'll cover front. Everyone else, protect yourselves, he ordered. Mina was spraying acid at the incoming balls that the opposing classes were throwing to the right of the group hurdle. Mineta was doing something with a whip made out of his hair balls, and Siro was using his taps to catch them and return fire. In order to protect some of his classmates who were firing back after spotting the enemy attacks, Shoji carried 2 shields. Shindo threw another ball at Izuku and yelled, Midoriya Izuku, you have a strength and enhancing quirk. If we're faster hitting you, then you won't have a chance. Izuku, who was the only exposed part of their formation, shouted, I'd like to see you try. With a competitive smile, he expanded his stance and increased his power to 15% as the balls began to fly in the direction of his targets. Izuku threw a candy bar out of his pocket and exclaimed, Sato-san. Help me out for a moment. Muscles bulging as he added more sugar to his reserves, Sato grabbed it and briefly tore off the wrapper while activating his quirk. All right, shouted Sato. Both boys shouted, St. Louis Smash. Sugar Rush, as their fists slammed into balls and pushed them away. Shindo activated his quirk and yelled, I'll take care of their defenses. Just make sure you let none of them pass this exam. Way of the Quaking Earth. Then he put his hands on the ground, scattering the defending class and breaking their formation as the ground beneath 1A shook and split. He has already figured out how to get around our quirks, right? Izuku pondered as a smile spread across his face. They must have researched us thoroughly. That only adds to the intrigue of this. With a swift rush, he deflected 5 more incoming balls by slamming his gloves together. Then, with a fresh plan in mind, he turned to the other pupils. And they nodded in agreement. Everyone, we have to work together if we're going to pass, he said. They started to divide up into 2-person teams. Izuku and Momo paired up, anticipating seeing 2 smiling opponents. One was Shindo, and the other was a white-themed woman holding a cup of tea. Eyes closed, the woman drank her tea and said, Yo Shindo, was it? My name is Psycho Intelli. Would you like a temporary truce between us to rid of these UA students? She opened her eyes once more, and they glowed, giving her the intelligence of a supercomputer. Shindo responded, getting his quirk ready for another earthquake, I would enjoy that. Izuku, still grinning, said, Momo, let's do this. Right, was her reply. Intelli turned to Shindo and remarked, how very interesting. I'll take on Yaoyorozu. She then ran in the direction of the girl, and as Shindo smirked confidently at Izuku, the 2 parted ways to go to a building in the arena for their own fight. Shindo put his hands on the ground and exclaimed, look, it looks like it's you and me. As Shindo raised his arms off the ground to toss a ball at Izuku, the ground started to tremble once more, and Izuku leapt from one section of the floor to another. Before Shindo could dodge it and the ball crashed into the wall beside him, the boxer leapt and kicked it back, sending it hurtling forward like a bullet. Izuku drew one of his own, threw it, and struck one of Shindo's targets, but Shindo was too stunned to notice it because his eyes widened. The boy cried out, ah, as the ball struck him too hard. He thought, shit, I only have one left. I guess I'll have to play the trump card first. When Izuku saw Shindo smile, he activated his glove over his fists. Izuku stopped in the middle of his thoughts when Shindo said, to be completely honest, I respect you Izuku Midoriya. The boxer's eyes widened as he saw that about half of his opponent's class was standing behind him, prepared to throw. Not only are you putting in maximum effort towards becoming a hero as well, you're putting in double due to being a boxer. However, Shindo said behind a wall of shadows. Shindo triggered his quirk again and yelled, "This is the end for you. Get him." Izuku dodged 3 incoming balls from Shindo's classmates after jumping to avoid falling into a crack that split the floor beneath him. He was about to charge in when he felt something was wrong. A girl who had the ability to fold into herself like a turtle with its shell caused him to sidestep to the right in order to avoid a ball that flew past him. This diverted his attention long enough for Shindo's next move to catch him off guard, rendering him immobile with his legs now sticking up to his knees. As Shindo put it, "We can do this, guys." His classmates gathered around him, rearranging their positions until they were prepared to launch another attack. 3 on left, 3 on right. Everyone else in the middle as we throw. He yelled. Izuku smiled when he saw this. Shindo shouted, "Attack," and threw his first ball. Izuku's eyes widened as he activated one for all while his classmates threw the rest of their balls. "The bleachers, Izuku," cried Melissa, fearing her shared boyfriend would take over. Joke said to her companion, who had an odd expression on his face, "It looks like your star student is in danger, Aizawa. Even if he's able to escape the floor trap Shindo made, I doubt Midoriya-san is fast enough to deflect all of that." Joke, "You underestimate the power of UA's resident boxer." Aizawa replied, "That problem child has more power right now than probably a good amount of pros on the field. But even pros would have trouble with this much, would they not?" She responded. "True, but you forget that getting out of tough spots is basically his career. Make it through, Izuku, please." Melissa pondered as she saw him confront the opposition with a determined gleam in his eyes. With Momo, she sat down and exclaimed, "Oh ho 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 ho. You think you can defeat the smartest student of CI Academy?" She exposed the 3 targets attached to her right leg by crossing it over her left. Intelli snapped her fingers and a group of girls appeared at both ends, welding the metal doors shut. "Now as Shindo-san takes care of the boxer, I'll be able to swiftly eliminate you." To kill Momo, another group hid on the roof and threw the supplied projectiles at her. Momo used a shield to block the incoming balls before dropping it to charge at Intelli. A ball struck Momo in the back, forcing her to turn around and block another, and she just grinned. Then, as a random assortment of objects, including the balls from this round, loose rocks from Shindo's shockwaves, and even the welding tools used to seal them inside, came flying at her, she formed a shell around herself. At the moment, Momo was stranded. Because of the shell she had constructed, she was not only physically but also psychologically in place. "I don't think her onslaught will stop anytime soon, and I'm running low on lipids. I have to find a way to make things better for myself." She pondered as a thought occurred to her. Intelli stood up and used her remaining lipids to create one last set of objects. With a smile on her face, she approached the protective shell. According to Intelli, this has gone absolutely splendid. As she heard Momo's pants of exhaustion, the other CI girls who stayed with Intelli went down to stand behind her as she reached for the shell, saying, "My plan to render your quirk useless has worked. You have nowhere to run, and we'll break the shell off of you if we have to. Ah, I do quite love when one of my brilliant plans comes together." With open-fingered boxing gloves on her hands and a set of jets on her arms pointing in the direction of the opponents, Momo exclaimed, "I agree." Intelli exclaimed, "What are those things?" "No matter, you won't have the chance to use them." As the girls started tossing the orange balls in an attempt to kill her. With the jets roaring to life and Intelli staring at her bewildered, Momo said, as a final thing to note, "Intelli-san." The balls approached, and Momo, like Izuku, stood with his legs spread wide in a secure footing, saying, "My boyfriend is the best teacher." She had executed one of Izuku's punching rush attacks when she yelled, 1,000 fists. With her fists meeting projectile, aura 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 ORAAAAA. She had adopted Midnight's battle cry, drawing some inspiration from Izuku's own use of the word, useless. The force of the jets moving her arms when her fists reset to the cocked back position made her punches less accurate and much more wild in terms of accuracy. In any case, it continued to work as she had planned, reflecting the balls back to the girls and deflecting them. She hit a few targets, but not enough of them to earn her 2 eliminations. She was panting at the end of her rush when she noticed that some of the reflected balls had pushed the girls back against a wall. Intelli gasped, "What the hell was that?" As Momo approached her, When she had uttered that sentence, her opponent was slumped to the floor with her back to the wall. Like I said, my boyfriend's the best teacher. I'm not as fast as he is, so I can't do that without these, Momo said as she raised her jets. Momo took her own orbs and eliminated her and another girl from the game, claiming her 2 eliminations. But for now this is the closest I can get. Momo walked away after saying, "Thank you, Intelli-san. This was a truly educational experience." Simultaneously, with Izuku, when Izuku first noticed the impending attacks, he activated Sixth Sense to give himself a brief reprieve. At 20%, he pumped One for All into his body using his slowed sense of time. He dodged the approaching objects by performing a Dempsey roll with his upper body. Even though it was working, one of his targets was hit, so it wasn't effective enough. Shindo hurled another ball and yelled, "You can't dodge forever." Under that one, Izuku rolled, still swaying from side to side. He is correct, I'll have to stop eventually, and they'll get me right away. Izuku's slowed vision darted between projectiles and opponents as he tried to figure out how to best escape his current predicament. There are too many of them for me to rush, but I could still get hit. This must be my final blow. Just one. With a sudden thought, he pushed himself to halt, negating all the momentum he had gained from his rolls. Shido threw and caught his third ball, saying, "Giving up now. I thought a boxer would hold out a little more before giving up." Then, grinning at the boxer, he caught it and prepared his arm to toss his final ball. He screamed, "I respect you, but this is the end." And threw at Izuku's final target, with the rest of his classmates following suit. They would remember the boxer's next words for the rest of their lives as they flew in his direction. As heroes, our job is to keep the peace that All Might left for us. And Ua will be the ones to lead. We will become the next generation of peace. Izuku screamed. He broke his feet free and stomped onto the ground with earth-shattering steps, charging himself to 40%. With a wild smile on his face, he then twisted his body to the right, cocking back his gloved right fist. "In honor of All Might, we will pass." Izuku unleashed a massive stream of air that neutralized the speed of the incoming balls, then abruptly threw up his left hand while holding back his middle finger with his thumb. Delaware. Izuku then abruptly materialized in front of the items in a green light flash. Then he threw his fist forward, hitting one of the balls with it. Detroit. SMAAAASH. His corkscrew cross struck, causing a cyclone to begin gathering nearby individuals and rushing in the direction of the Ketsubutsu students. Shindo said, "Oh, shit." He and the other pupils attempted to defend themselves, but Izuku had leapt to his feet and, using a series of well-placed kicks, launched them at the students at twice their current speed. Due to their inability to adapt to the abrupt change in speed, they ended up slamming into the students' targets or themselves, sending them flying in all directions. A third ball landed hard onto one of the targets on Shindo's chest as he attempted to counter with his quirk, raising his arms to create a shockwave, but the abrupt change in speed struck his arms, pushing them away. Some of the students hurried off after saying, "He's too strong," in an attempt to pass with just 1 or 2 hits. Izuku was left standing over Shindo and the student who could bury herself like a turtle. With one of his own orange orbs in hand, Izuku remarked, "Shindo-san, that was a decent strategy, if I'm being honest." As the orange ball struck his last target, Shindo grinned and said, "And about what I said just now. I fully intend to keep that promise. UA will overcome the challenges in these licensing exams and uphold the peace that All Might left behind." As Izuku claimed his second elimination from the turtling girl, he said, "Better keep it, because we'll steal that role from you if you don't." Midoriya Izuku and Yaoyorozu Momo have passed. Bleachers. Thank goodness. Melissa exhaled, relieved that Momo and Izuku had passed the first round. Joke and Aizawa were conversing separately at the same moment. As Aizawa watched Kaminari defeat a student who could transform people into what seemed to be sentient flesh potatoes, Joke remarked, "Your students are doing quite well. Midoriya and Yaoyorozu especially. They even seem to finish their opponents off the same way." Meaningful final message into elimination. Being two of the most intelligent people in my class, it was only a matter of time before they had started to grow off of each other. Yaoyorozu is learning how to think faster on her feet and fight with less reliance on her quirk, while the problem child is learning how to change his fighting style and adapt to situations even faster than he already did before. Aizawa then exhaled, "As much as those two give me a headache, they've shown a very rational rate of growth since the start of the year." As the first round ended, Joked, now if only my class would do the same. The students were now in the student lobby after passing. At the moment, Izuku was sitting down and sipping water. In order to allow his hands to air out, he had tape in his pockets and his gauntlets in the bracelet shape. According to Momo, who was sitting right next to Izuku, the last round was quite exhilarating. The gloves were still on, but she had taken off the arm rockets from her battle with Intelli and her classmates. He said, I agree. He was keeping an eye on the crowd to see if anyone else had passes when he was abruptly passed. He then noticed a tiny cut that was bleeding when he looked down at the slight sting on his left arm. Before they abruptly vanished into the crowd, he glanced up to meet the eyes of a smiling girl. Momo, who had already bandaged it, asked, Izuku, when did you get cut? Izuku turned back to the spot where he had last seen the smiling student and remarked, I don't know. Strange. But now that the next round was underway, he had no time to concentrate on it. When the remaining students who had made it through the first round walked out to the field, they saw a city in ruins. The area appeared to have been the site of a villain attack, as there were fires and debris all over it. Turned back to face Mera after hearing the sound of a microphone being tested. He was followed by a sizable group of people, ranging in age from young children to elderly people, standing in a line. Congratulations on making it to the Yon next round. This will be a two-part operation featuring live victims, courtesy of a private labor force specialized in acting as civilians for heroes in training. They will be scattered across the field with various injuries and point values. Your goal is to recognize their injuries and bring them to the evacuation zone to the southeast end of the field where the paramedics will only be able to help if you state their injury. To pass, you must achieve a high enough score by the end of the timer. There is also a very high-valued secret target, so if you save him you will automatically have pass. A man with a whale head emerged, leading a group of men in black jumpsuits with big cement cannons. This won't be easy however, as the villains that caused this incident will still be prowling around with their leader, Gang Orca. The rest of the students were just swooning over Gang Orca's appearance when the phony villain leader yelled, "You won't be able to stop us." Mera concluded his explanation as the others had already started to make plans. They will try their hardest to thwart your efforts, which leads to the next part, secure the area. While the civilians are being saved, your other objective is to yawn clear the area of villains. They can also score you points, but be warned, priorities are of absolute necessity here. Izuku put on his gauntlets and clenched his fists once more. As the other students in the line got ready, he clenched his fists in anticipation. The best course of action is to go for the rest of the civilians and save as many as I can, Izuku thought, pausing to look at Melissa in the stands. I predict Todoroki and some others will gun straight for the secret target first. She smiled reassuringly, telling the boxer, I believe in you. And causing him to smile. At the ring of the bell, he hurried in and turned back to the fake ruins. The sound of roaring flames and sobbing civilians filled his ears as he ran into the scene, where suited villains and fire were all around. The mock villains began firing their cement cannons at him. Izuku dodged one of their blows and used his gloves to slam one into a villain. He immediately twisted his body to avoid another cement shot after throwing a straight to hit one. He used the momentum from that to launch the villain into the air with a left uppercut. Now that he was upright again, the boxer headed to one of the sobbing spots, trapped behind a concrete debris shell. After that, he turned off his gloves and allowed one for all to run through him at 15%. He then carefully raised the debris and set it aside. He thought of All Might when he saw the child crying. The one sentence he said stuck with him since he was 4 years old, and he recalled the video of his debut that he had watched as a child. Izuku extended a softly wrapped hand to the child, who looked up and asked, "You don't need to have fear any longer." "Why?" "Because I'm here." Eventually, the heroes in training were able to begin saving lives 10 minutes into the test. The remaining students were cooperating to identify injuries and remove injured citizens rather than competing with one another. Some were caught in the process of preventing the villains from interfering. The secret target, a whiny politician with a sprained ankle, was almost immediately identified by Todoroki. Bakugo lost points because he refused to help the people and only fought the bad guys, even when he stopped the others from rescuing civilians. Melissa exclaimed, her eyes gleaming at the sight, "They're so cool." She was pleased to see these heroes save lives and defend one another in spite of the fact that it was a competition, if only because it was the closest she could get to seeing real hero action without being in imminent danger. A figure questioned the drowsy man, who yawned. In terms of saving civilians, heroes are designed to act as intermediate rescuers until the true rescue teams arrive. How are they doing, Mara? The HUC people are reducing less and less points due to the work these hero hopefuls are doing, said Mara. Let's see if upping the difficulty a little bit will change that. As a tidal wave of villains emerged, the students had already evacuated the remaining civilians to the designated medical area when a huge explosion rocked the arena. In order to prepare these upcoming heroes for their future work, recently we've included villains to this segment of the exam, said Mara. The League of Villains has been on the rise, and we need to prepare them in the scenario that they are attacked by the League. I just hope their cooperation can last even through here. Bakugo cried out, "Die!" and unleashed yet another round of explosions to destroy a group of adversaries, also destroying their concrete shots. When Todoroki threw a wave of fire at another group, the group was instantly destroyed along with the fire. Inasa was glaring at the boy when he turned to face her. Confusing Todoroki, he said, "Son of Endeavor, stop trying to hog all the credit to yourself." The boy with two hairs questioned, "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're Endeavor's son, so of course you would try and steal all the glory for yourself by beating all the villains." When Inasa uttered his father's name, Todoroki glared back, saying, "I'm nothing like that man." Then, his eyes grew wide as the villains threw a cement ball at one of his sides, causing it to fall to the ground. "I remember the rudeness of the man years ago. He inspired me, thinking that his hot-blooded spirit is what makes a hero, yet his attitude betrayed me. I thought him an amazing hero, yet I realized that you are the same as him, a self-centered joke." Gang Orca hurled himself at Inasa, who ducked, and said, "I don't see the point of arguing in front of a villain, especially after your comrade was hit by a free shot as a result of it. But if you're giving me this opportunity, I may as well take it." Momo saw them from the side and was about to run in to help, but her current situation held her back. As villains on the other side were shooting at her only cover, she was currently hiding behind a riot shield that had been stuck in her arms and was now on the cement floor. Inasa attempted to fire another wind blast at the villain leader, but the attack was neutralized by the villain leader's sonar ability. "I could come help them, but by the time I get there, I'll be out of fat cells," she thought as her vision turned red and a raging conflagration of flames appeared before her. This caused Todoroki and Inasa to simultaneously shoot a wave of wind and fire, with the EIND pushing the furs aside and inadvertently flying in Momo's direction, causing her eyes to widen. Gang Orca, who was already en route to stop the girl's accidental attack, watched in shock. When the wave of fire suddenly rose, Izuku Midoriya was in front of Momo in an uppercut position, and the entire stadium froze. His hair cast a shadow over his eyes, and Todoroki and Inasa became a little alarmed by what they saw. Izuku's eyes glowed, his teeth clenched, and his quirk lines were emerald green again. As he breathed inside his rage form, steam poured out. "What the fuck are you two doing?" snarled the furious Izuku, leaving Inasa and Gang Orca speechless as they had never witnessed this before. "You almost killed Momo because you two can't put aside petty fighting," Izuku yelled. "If you two can't put aside petty arguments to save people, then don't bother being heroes at all." Izuku then used his own gloved fist to block Gang Orca's blow to Todoroki, sending a tiny shockwave in the process. When Izuku moved back to help Momo again, the two boys' eyes grew wide. Izuku nodded as Momo said, "I'll be fine, but if you could lessen the enemies by just a little I would be grateful." As the villains started shooting at the unprotected hero, he leapt out of cover while still in rage form. With his fists blurring, he screamed, "WWWRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR hurried in herself, wearing boxing shoes and half-gloves, to strike the enemies who were distracted with well-placed blows. After they were done, he turned to see Todoroki and Inasa nod and exchange a brief glance. Gang Orca then used his quirk to neutralize the attack once more after they unleashed a strong blast of wind and fire that rose like a tornado around him. Gang Orca charged at them and exclaimed, "I'm glad to see you two finally cooperating despite your fighting, but that's not enough to defeat me." Cannons were aimed at the three as more villains hurried to his aid, but Momo and Izuku rushed them with a barrage of punches and kicks. The whale-headed hero smiled as Mera said, "3 civilians remain. The exam will conclude upon their rescue." The number 10 hero said, "I poured water on myself to avoid drying out. What else do you have planned?" As their opponent charged, Todoroki was held up by Inasa, and the two were getting ready to launch a full-scale counterattack. Izuku appeared again before they could engage in combat, blocking the hero's wide overhead kick. Izuku roared, "I'll save them too," as the hero noticed a big crack on his arm brace. "Midoriya, give me a good fight," he retorted, punch to kick, fist to femur. Izuku vanished in a flash, emerging with his fists raised behind Gang Orca. Izuku vanished behind the man as he turned to launch his sonar attack once more. Izuku adopted the infighter stance this time, stooping to appear smaller as he passed through Gang Orca's KO guard. Half of the punch is ready to be thrown. As Izuku's fist drew nearer, the hero's red eyes grew wide as the boy threw his whole body into the uppercut. Mera's voice echoed through the arena just before the punch could land. With the glove only a few centimeters away from his chin, Gang Orca looked down and said, "All civilians have been saved. The exam is officially over." His quirk deactivated, and all the anger and animosity he felt from this child vanished. Then Izuku Midoriya got back up and turned to face Gang Orca. The boy said, "Gang Orca sensei, thank you for this opportunity." Izuku smiled as he said, "No problem. This was the most fun fighting someone other than villains I've had in a while. You're pretty strong, kid." Izuku turned to face the Yaoyorozu girl, who was waving at the boy, and said, "Thanks. Oh, I need to go, my girlfriend's calling me." To Inasa's surprise, Todoroki remarked, "And just like always, when all is lost Midoriya comes in to save the day." When the exam finally ended, the boy was going to ask what that was about, but that would have to wait until later. Standing in the arena in front of Mera's location once more, this time, a huge screen with the names of the heroes displayed in front of it. Mera declared that a student had passed if their name appeared on the board. When Gang Orca came around, Inasa, Bakugo, and Todoroki realized that their names were missing from the board. Katsuki Bakugo failed because he refused to soothe the troubled civilians and instead charge at the villains. While sometimes this may be a viable strategy depending on the cause of the situation, saving lives should always be a priority over defeating villains. The hero replied, before turning to Inasa as well as Todoroki. Both teenagers turned to face one another and nodded in agreement as Gang Orca said, "You two may have had excellent scores during the first round, but your inability to cooperate during the second round almost caused harm to another. Until the two of you can work together, you both fail." After obtaining their license cards, those who passed went back to their homes. Melissa was seen running up to Izuku and Momo, who had stopped for a moment outside the testing area. With a shout of, "Congratulations you two," she embraced Momo and Izuku. As he glanced at the card displaying his provisional license, Izuku replied, "Thanks Melissa." It featured a portrait of him, and Momo could still make out the pride in his eyes as well as the unbridled confidence that came from the boxer's smile. "I still can't believe that we've gotten this far," Momo said. "Well, we're here now. The least we can do now is be ready for the future." Izuku then appeared to be pondering for a moment before making a decision. "Agreed. Let's go out to dinner tonight to celebrate. It'll be my treat." "Are you sure? I can pay." "Momo, please. I want to do this for the both of you," Melissa said, and Momo smiled slightly. "Okay then, I'm looking forward to it then. Is this going to be fancy? I didn't bring a dress." "I can help with that. Thank you." As the two girls headed back to the dorms, Izuku said, "I have a reservation set for 8, so we should leave a little earlier than that." They both nodded in agreement. Eventually, Izuku was heading back to the room he shared with Momo and Melissa in the Heights Alliance dorms to get ready for their upcoming date when he noticed Bakugo walking past him. Izuku froze when he said, "Deku, meet me at Ground Gamma later tonight. I need to talk to you about your quirk." The boxer gave him a slight turn and answered. Izuku began to leave after saying, "If you want to challenge me to a fight, make it tomorrow. I have a date." Bakugo continued to glare at his retreating form as he walked back to the shared room, saying, "But for the record, I accept." Izuku checked that he had everything ready for tonight in the shared room. His suit that Momo had given him for Island was fixed and ready to go again, and the reservation was made. It was as comfortable as the first time he wore it, he thought when he tried it on. He took it off, carried the clothes into the bathroom, and showered briefly while trying to style his typically untidy hair. Wearing his suit, he walked back into the room, walked up to his All Might clock, opened a panel in the back, took something out, and put it in his coat pocket. Momo and Melissa hurried into the room to get ready as he left, content with his latest behavior. He sat down on one of the couches in the common area and felt Bakugo's glare trying to get to him from where he was sitting. He tried his hardest not to let it affect him. After all, he had a date. Speaking of, the boxer's attention was drawn to the clacking sounds of 2 pairs of heels to his left. He turned, only to have his eyes widen when he saw how beautiful his 2 dates were. Melissa's long dress, which flowed down to her ankles to reveal heels of the same hue, was the same aqua blue as her eyes. A custom black choker with a golden design that resembled a hood with a grill was used to complete the ensemble. The dress had an electrical circuit theme, with lines of gold fabric running up towards the blouse to her chest, adding appreciation to her blonde hair, which was currently styled similarly to the Island Expo. The choker was meant to resemble Izuku when wearing both his respirator and his hood. Momo was dressed in a black dress with no back, exposing her bare arms and a low V that just started to show her cleavage to the man she loved. The navy blue sash around her waist that broke into a white skirt that fell to her feet accentuated the silver design on the torso, which gave the impression that she was a night sky. Her gray, feline eyes were accentuated by the silver bracelet on her right wrist. Her hair, loose and falling over her right shoulder, completed the ensemble. The 2 girls giggled a little as Izuku struggled to speak. "Why you two? Momo teased, "What's wrong, Izuku? Run out of words." As he uttered just one word, they both blushed a pale shade of red like he did when he said, "Stunning." According to Melissa, "Thank you." That jolted Izuku out of his reverie and signaled for them to depart. "Shall we go?" As they left, Momo clung to his right and Melissa to his left, both of them holding him tenderly. Todoroki, Hiroshima, and Mina were left in the common area, enjoying soba and taking in the scene. In order to prevent them from acting hastily, Kaminari and Mineta were present as well, but their blazing jealousy was not nearly hot enough to break the ice they were currently stuck in. "Hey Kiri." "Yeah, Ashido-chan, if we're still here when they return then remind me to stay in Jiro-chan's room." "Why? Mine is right next to theirs, and I'm scared." Eventually, after a brief ride in a Momo limo, the 3 arrived at Il Mondo, one of the most well-known international eateries in Musudafu. In addition to being regularly served by Lunch Rush during his free time, it also had a secret area that provided much-needed privacy for heroes and celebrities, which contributed to its notoriety. Staff members escorted the 3 to this section, which was located in a hallway separate from the kitchen. A large room with a circular table and booth-like seats encircling it was then shown to them. One of the room's only sources of light was the chandelier above the table. The silver specks on the walls gave the impression that the room was under a midnight sky, and the faint blue and violet accents on the furnishings and space heightened the impression. They sat down in the same spot they had entered, with both girls standing on either side of Izuku. After their orders were taken, Momo said, "So Izuku, what prompted you to take us to one of Japan's most popular restaurants for celebration?" Izuku took a deep breath and took 2 rectangular boxes out of his blazer pocket. "Well, I wanted to do something nice for the 2 of you. It's been a while since the 3 of us were able to anything together, and since we finally have the chance I wanted it to be amazing." When Melissa and Momo opened their individual boxes, they discovered gold necklaces with the same design and emerald encircled by a circle of gold and a gold ring with a circuit-like pattern that matched Melissa's dress. "And I also wanted to do something nice for the 2 of you." Melissa said, "Izuku, it's beautiful." Izuku took the necklace and assisted her in putting it on, then did the same for Momo. The boy's next words caused him to become very anxious. "As I said, I wanted to do something nice. I bought these a few weeks ago after training with Kato-sensei, and they came in a few days before the license exams. Thank you both, for giving me something I've never even thought I'd ever have. My childhood was rough, for lack of a better term. Between training with Kato-sensei, struggling early on in my boxing career to care for mom and being lonely throughout school, I never thought I would be able to find someone who I could say I love wholeheartedly, much less the 2 beautiful women next to me." Both were overcome with emotion when Melissa spoke. "Thank you as well, Izuku. I thought I was going to never leave Island, that I would just find someone there and do the same thing over and over. But you helped save my father, and the entire island with Uncle Might. I admired you since Papa and I started watching your career, because you were able to tell me that a quirkless person had the strength to do anything they wanted. And I love you too," Melissa said, taking Izuku's breath away with her sincere. It was amazing to hear again how much of an impact he had on her life, even though she had said something similar when she had confessed some time ago. I must add to that as well. Izuku, you've been a massive influence in my life ever since we began at UA. You beat through my insecurities and showed me that I have nothing to worry about. Not just that, you even helped me learn a fighting style to ensure that a weakness I didn't even know I had. And for all of that and everything else we've been through along the way, I love you as well. Izuku noticed that tears were starting to fall out of his eyes. Izuku finally let his tears fall, and both girls embraced him as he said, why you guys? Quote. He reoriented himself, and then their food came. They then talked about other things they had done in their free time, like Melissa meeting Hatsumeme from the support course, which made Izuku and Momo a little nervous. Izuku was talking about his research for his shoot style in the meantime, setting aside his empty plates to put his notebook on the table and talk about these fresh concepts. It was a leisurely stroll back to the dorms after dinner, but Izuku couldn't understand why Momo and Melissa insisted on coming back so quickly. As they made their way back to the dorms, Izuku was left outside for reasons, and he leaned against the wall next to the shared room for approximately 5 minutes before Momo's voice alerted him. The two girls had entered the room quickly. She exclaimed, "You can come in now." Izuku went in as directed. And as soon as his eyes met the scene before him, they widened even more than they had previously. Momo's girlfriends were lying on his bed, one in a scandalous amount of clothing and the other in nothing at all. On Izuku's side of the bed, Melissa lay in a sensual outfit consisting of a red bra that showed off her entire chest and a bow that joined the two cups. The excess fabric beneath her chest was orange cloth with red outlines, emphasizing her perky mounts. A coordinating red garter around her waist was attached to orange stockings that complemented the fabric, highlighting her features. The thing that widened his eyes the most was that her mound was fully visible to him because there were no underwear underneath the garter. With her hair completely down and her previous contacts taken out, she had a divine appearance in Izuku's eyes. Then his gaze shifted to Momo, who wore nothing but her classic ponytail and a seductive smile. With a sensual tone, Momo continued, "Izuku, it's been quite some time since we've been able to do these things together." Izuku took a step forward before they heard his blazer fall to the floor, but he didn't say anything. "Don't you think it's time to fix that?" "You're right, Momo." Izuku kicked off his socks and shoes, causing his dress shirt to fall to the ground instantly. Izuku," Melissa stammered, her face flushed from being so vulnerable in front of him. I want to do lewd things. If that's what you want." Izuku's shirt then fell to the ground, and Momo and Melissa were further alerted by the sound of a buckle being undone. "Then who am I to refuse?" Momo exhaled, stood up, and sat Izuku down at the edge of their bed. "Then come here, Izuku," she said. Melissa came right behind him, both girls kneeling before him. The blonde girl nodded and reached for Izuku's zipper, pulling it down to take off his pants. "Melissa, would you like to do the honors?" she asked. When he took off his trousers, Momo was delighted to see a pair of red boxers with a noticeable bulge. She put her hand on his crotch and gently rubbed him over the cloth, saying, "Izuku, it's been so long." He twitched slightly as a result of the action, and Melissa saw that he was straining against the fabric. With one hand on Izuku's lower back and the other on her right breast, Momo approached her to plant a kiss. As his hand was encased in her soft body, he gently squeezed her nipple between two of his fingers, causing her to moan into his mouth. As Melissa reached for the waistband of the boxer, his other hand trailed lower, his fingers gently digging into her ass. She swiftly reached up and pulled down the cloth, causing a monster to jump out and slap her face. In awe of the beast before her, she exhaled, "It's huge." At least he attempted to wrap her hand around it. Izuku groaned into the kiss with Momo as she slowly pumped her hand up and down the length. The sounds coming from the boxer's mouth made Melissa feel brave, so she pushed harder and pushed her head forward to give his tip a quick kiss. In order to get a better look at Melissa at work, Momo lowered herself and pulled away from their kiss. With one half in her mouth and the other half being enjoyed with both hands, the blonde had engulfed him in her mouth. As he helped her take in even more of his member, Izuku had taken to putting his hands on her head and running them through her blonde hair. Momo, meanwhile, made the decision to participate as well. She was enjoying herself with her left hand, her fingers diving into the folds that she knew would soon be abused in a pleasurable way. With one hand in the depths of Melissa's throat, the other was on the breast that Izuku had left untouchable, latching onto the side of the last inch of Izuku's shaft that was left uncovered. She ran her tongue over his length, After roughly 10 minutes, the boxer could no longer handle the two's erotic hums and moans as they performed their magic. Both women pumped with their hands to push him over the edge, spraying into the girls' eager mouths like a garden hose. Momo said, "Delicious." Melissa took a moment to come to the same conclusion, and her swallowing sound could be heard. Izuku put both of his arms around the blonde's lower back and placed his mouth right next to her ear. "Now, Izuku, I'd like to give the first turn to Melissa. It's her first time after all." As he slowly rubbed her back in circles, Izuku exhaled in a lustful voice, "Of course. Is there anything special you want, Melissa?" She whispered back, "When we do it, would you mind if I was on top?" Izuku wanted her even more because of the intense lust in her voice. He gave a slight nod in response, then planted a kiss on her lips. The way her tongue explored his mouth was erotic, so he gave in to her request and let her take the lead. She broke the kiss and pushed him onto his back as she started to push him back towards the bed. Melissa teased Izuku by slowly crawling onto him and saying, "Calm down, Izuku. Let me take care of you." Taking her time, she slowly moved upwards, kissing his abs lightly. Before returning to his lips for a slow, passionate kiss, she left a few hickeys at the base of his neck and moved up his abs and over his pecs. Pulling him up to her chest, she sat up on his lap. Izuku jumped right in when she beckoned, "It's all yours, Izuku." The blonde hummed as his left hand squeezed her right breast, pressing the nipple against his palm. Izuku went crazy when she saw the boxer gently nibbling the other between her teeth. She exclaimed, "Tea, that feels so good, more." And he responded with more. In order to make sure Momo got attention too, he had her slowly ride his right middle and ring fingers while he nibbled her other nipple with his free hand. The two of them continued to hum and moan until Melissa declared herself ready. She fully straddled Izuku, lining him up in her other hand and pushing him down again, stabilizing herself with her left hand on his chest. As her hymen was broken through this action, the boxer let out a little scream, followed by an audible plop into her mouth. As Izuku twitched inside her, she broke off her connection with his lips and ran her hands up her body to further entice him. "On," she moaned at his sighs after the pain of being taken for the first time had passed. Then she started rolling her hips, causing Izuku's member to gradually push in and out as a result of her motions. Izuku," she exclaimed, feeling every pulsing inch of her body. The only thing that came to mind for Izuku right now was that Melissa was tight. Not as much as Momo when they first met, but still enough to make him go crazy from the pleasure of being inside her. To ensure that the two of them could enjoy every moment of this enjoyable act, she put her hands on his pecs to hold him down. After about 20 minutes of this, she began to bounce on his lap, her groans filling the room as the boxer's member slammed into the entrance to her womb. Izuku grunted and moaned in time with her own sounds of pleasure, her hands on her thighs to help her move. Izuku's dripping slit was exposed to him when Momo, not wanting to be left out, crawled forward towards the two and swung a leg over his head. "I am so excited to see Izuku," Momo exclaimed, lowering his face. The three remained in this position for the next hour. After coming about 10 times while bouncing on Izuku, Melissa gave him back control. Her mind was too jumbled from too much incredible sex to work properly. As they struggled to stay upright on their own, she and Momo held hands while their breasts squished together. "S so good," Momo snarled, and Melissa could only groan in agreement. Izuku's tongue was still probing Momo's deepest recesses and giving her unending pleasure as she was having her 12th orgasm. He was able to identify her weak spot at some point during that hour and kept poking it with his tongue to make her feel even more than she had before. Izuku said, I'm gonna," before launching himself even more forcefully into the woman above him and starting to eat out the other. Izuku finally arrived after 3 more minutes, and as the two girls let out a final scream, Melissa's insides started to get sprayed with hot, white liquid. All 3 of them were panting as Momo fell to the side and Melissa landed on Izuku's chest. Then he looked at Momo, who spread her legs apart with a sensual smile. The boy crawled over her and lined up in response to her words, "Izuku. Ravish me." Izuku filled her pussy right away, knowing how much she could handle. "Why yes," she exclaimed, with Izuku already inside her. Her eyes rolled to the top of her head as his thrusts hammered in and out of her at high speeds. "Oh god, Izu on," she groaned, encircling her lover with her arms and legs to keep him as close to her as she could. Izuku continued to move without pausing to ask, Momo, do you mind if I try something?" Momo groaned, Gee, oh god, give me more, go ahead. Alright, then, 1% ought to be sufficient. Here I am, Izuku pondered as the lightning and body glow materialized. Momo's legs shot straight up as Izuku abruptly doubled the intensity of his fucking, and her thoughts were consumed by nothing but Izuku and sex. As Izuku's lightning touched her skin, she pleaded, on, ha. More. Her words turned into moans. As the green sparks touched her skin, it expressed his lust and all of his love. As he stuffed her tight velvet insides for an additional hour, Izuku moved to kiss her as her tongue rolled out of her wide-open mouth. Izuku eventually caught up to her with one of his own orgasms after she had had 5 more. Izuku moaned, Momo, as she felt him twitching inside of her. She cried out, DDD do it. Come. Izuku slowed down for his last thrusts, pushing as far inside her as he could before sending a one-for-all boosted orgasm into her deepest recesses. His eyes glowed brightly as he used his quirk, and Momo noticed this as she looked into his eyes. When she first began having sex with Izuku, she believed she had never been more turned on in her life. She was convinced by this one action that he could somehow arouse her even more. He rolled between Momo and Melissa as they rested for a while after he got off of her. After recovering, the blonde exhaled, that was amazing. Then she caught a glimpse of movement and turned to see Izuku's member standing upright once more. It's still up, the girl cried, startled, as she heard Momo laugh across from Izuku. Momo gasped, I forgot to tell you, about his stamina. Melissa went a shade lighter, bracing herself to absorb her lover's boundless energy. After 2 hours, Momo cried, Izuku you. As Izuku crashed into her womb from behind, she was on her knees with her upper body flat on the mattress. Sweat was all over the three of them, and the room was filled with the sound and smell of saw sex. The boxer made out with Melissa from behind, one hand on her waist and the other fingering the velvet walls. She cupped his face with her chest against his back and played with Momo's clit with 2 fingers, which gave her even more pleasure. She cried out, CCC coming again. Izuku groaned into Melissa's kiss while he filled Momo. She paused to catch her breath before sensing a sudden change in the world. Abruptly, she found herself in his lap, with the boy's arms encircling and beneath her breasts. I'm still as sensitive Izuku. Momo's eyes widened as he began thrusting upwards into her out of the blue, while she held onto his head with her right hand. Melissa's shield held onto one of her breasts while watching the scene and putting 2 fingers to her lower lips for pleasure. Izuku had his eyes closed and a satisfied smile on his face as he continued to please his girlfriend, who had raven hair, as he bounced her on his cock. Momo's loose hair framed her face in a highly erotic manner as her ponytail bounced in time with her chest. Now that her eyes were closed, she was enjoying the sensation of Izuku's penis bursting into her womb once more. As she and Izuku returned, Momo was at a loss for words. Amazing. When he looked back up, he saw Melissa with her fingers spread wide for him as he pulled her away and gently placed her on the bed. She said, please, Izuku. And he did as she asked. Another hour later, Melissa groaned, her mouth firmly pressed to Izuku's. As he thrust into her, her legs were spread out to the sides, held by the back of her knees. With his left hand on her clit and his right on the back of her neck, her back was securely pressed against his. As Sapphire Blue gazed into Emerald Green, Melissa separated, leaving a trail of saliva behind. Melissa groaned, I'll love you, Izuku. As Izuku's thrust grew more forceful and rapid, Izuku answered, I love you too, Melissa. You and Momo both. Melissa reached the end after 10 more minutes of unadulterated pleasure. With wide eyes, Melissa exclaimed, Izuku, I'm gonna CC cum. As she found herself on her back out of the blue, Izuku trapped her in a mating press, pushing her feet toward her head. She cried out, Izuku was positioned deep enough to give her the same treatment Momo got a slam into her womb through her cervix. Melissa let out a final groan as she joined Izuku, and she screamed even more in pleasure as he arrived for the final time that evening, his girth visible outside, the mixture of semen from earlier and now leaking out of her. Gently, he laid her beside Momo as he pulled out. Momo and Melissa clung to his sides affectionately as he covered them all and moved them under the covers. Before the 3 fell asleep, Izuku made them smile by saying, I love you. Both of you. The following day, the two girls grabbed onto their favorite pillow when the three of them woke up the following morning. When Izuku helped two pairs of unsteady legs get ready for the day, he escorted them to the main lobby, where Bakugo gave him a glare right away. As Bakugo left the lobby, all he said was, "Ground Gamma." Recalling his challenge from yesterday, Izuku turned back to face the explosive boy. So, if he is aware of One for All, Izuku thought to himself, I need to tell Momo and Melissa about it. He pretended to be cheerful until the appointed moment arrived. However, the remainder of the day was pretty typical. As usual, Melissa and May continued to think and work on new inventions in class, and during hero training, Izuku assisted Momo in honing her hand-to-hand skills. When she employed her new 1000 fists technique, he also assisted her in overcoming the inaccurate swings. Izuku took Momo and Melissa to Ground Gamma at nightfall. While wearing her slightly oversized cream sweater, Momo remarked, "You know that Aizawa-sensei will be mad at us when he find out about this." "I know, but I need to at least try to talk to Kachan. If things go too far, I want you and Melissa to be there to stop a fight." Izuku was wrapping his arms around himself. He was wearing a pair of gym shorts, red sneakers, and a black tank top with the word, "casual clothing," printed on it. Melissa, dressed in her island attire, was also pursuing the two. Melissa saw Bakugo ahead and asked, "What does that mean?" Reaching the explosive blonde, the boxer answered, "Well, you'll find out." He grunted as he turned to face the two girls behind Izuku. He questioned angrily, "Why'd you bring them along, Deku?" Izuku inhaled deeply. "To make sure this doesn't go any further than it has to, Kachan." "Now what was it you wanted to tell me?" As Momo and Melissa looked on in shock, he said, "It's about your quirk. It was never yours to begin with, was it?" Momo questioned, "What are you talking about?" Bakugo answered, "Do you really think that Deku wouldn't use his quirk when boxing? Someone gave him that quirk, and I think I know who." "Kachan, what are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Deku." Bakugo, the only one able to give people quirks, was arrested by All Might. "Don't tell me Izuku was ever in contact with him." Melissa responded, "Tell me the truth, Deku. Ever since All Might came to this damn school you've had a quirk. The only reason I know this is because you were fucking quirkless in middle school." Melissa said, "Izuku, what's he talking about?" While Momo kept watching, "No secrets," Izuku said, thinking to himself. Izuku turned to face Bakugo and said, "Momo, Melissa, I have something you two need to know." He took a deep breath before continuing. "My quirk is called One for All."
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.